Hello guys, welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be doing some tournament analysis. So, if you're not sure what that is, this is actually the type of content that I sort of first got started with in Kards. Essentially, I'm going to be breaking down the tournament, breaking down the plays, giving my thoughts on what I would have done differently, what I think was a really good play, and that includes in-game and bans, lineups, etc, etc, etc. So, for now, we are going to be looking at the quarterfinals of the OCC Ultimate that happened last weekend. So this was the culmination of 3 months of OCCs. The top 8 people who collected points throughout the 3 months get invited to the OCC Ultimate, where they play out for a $3,000 prize pool. So, the quarterfinals, I already know the result. It's a week later. I played in them. This is going to be part 1, and then part 2 is something that I recorded on the day it happened, which is my live reaction and analysis of the semifinals and finals matches. So I decided to shake up the format a little bit. If you want to watch both, please do, and let me know which you prefer, or if you like having a little bit of both. So with that, let's get into the games.
What a performance there by J King.
J King, full plot armor.
J King is pushing himself into the ranks of the legend.
J King is our world champion. J King 7. What? The back-to-back Kards world champion.
Alright, so here is the bracket for this OCC Ultimate. At the top of the bracket, you have Head versus Tiger, then No One versus myself, Jinlun versus Leo, and Berto Burrito versus Ubu Moy. So this is quite an impressive array of players. And to just give you a little bit of context around each player, Head, of course, won the very first OCC Clash. He was the finalist in the World Championship of 2022. However, his track record in OCCs, not great. He's been knocked out of the first round in every OCC he has participated in, except for the one he won, which clinched him the points to get here. Then his next round opponent is Tiger, who has likewise never won an OCC, despite having played in, I think, around 9, 10, maybe a dozen OCCs. He has never managed to win. He's always fallen just a little bit short. Even in the clashes, he got third. Sorry, he got second. He actually lost in Game 5 of the finals to Head. Then you have No One versus myself. We are by far the most experienced tournament players. I've played in every single OCC. I think No One has played in almost 20 by now. And then on the bottom side of the bracket, you have Jinlun with, I believe, 4 OCC appearances, Leo with 2 OCC appearances, Moy with, I think, 3 OCC appearances, and then Berto Burrito with about a dozen OCC experiences. So Berto definitely the one to look out for in terms of experience, and experience is going to play a factor in these best of 5s. This is no longer just ban Britain and then see if you can high roll 2 games in a row in a best of 3. A best of 5, you have to bring 4 decks. It means you have to be comfortable on a wider range of decks, and you have to be able to consistently play those decks across a wider set of games. So these gaps in experience could start to come in. However, let's skip all that straight into the first set, which of course is going to be Head versus Tiger. Here is a quick look at their stats pages. I'm not going to particularly go through them, but these are lifetime stats, except for the most played. I think the most played is just most played in the last month, but everything else here is lifetime stats, unlike the monthly stats that they've switched to for the OCC clashes. Of course, here are Tigers, so you can see Head has played more games, despite actually being a newer player. And now let's take a look at the lineups. So there's going to be a decent amount of similarity between all of the lineups. Head has the frontline Air, Soviet France, and Jur Italy. I think the first 3 decks, at least, very standard picks. I don't see anything too off about his frontline deck. I don't see anything too off about his air. Not running Sonya is an interesting thing. I've seen a lot of people just not run Sonya. I'm not sure exactly what this is teched for. Because I feel like Sonya is just a really, really good card, but he's rather running 2 Rafts Mosquito than Sonya. And then Soviet France. I felt his Soviet France deck was quite lacking in the last OCC clash. Looking at this one here, I think it's well, it's a little hard to say. I definitely see some strengths to this version. And then last but not least, you have his Italy control with 4 Careless Talks. This is a deck that is intended to be able to beat aggro. You see he's not running King Tiger. He is not running Africa Core. So this deck is not going to do particularly well into Soviet France. But it should do quite well into aggro. And it doesn't really feel like he's targeting anything with his lineup. It just feels like he was like, well, I don't want aggro, I'm just going to bring this Italy deck. I don't mind that. And then on Tiger's side, you see Tiger has Soviet Italy self-damage, this really strange German-Japan aggro deck, and then Britain-Japan Air and Japan-Britain Air. Now, I feel that Japan-Britain Air is not a great deck. It has its strengths, specifically if you're running it with a lot of pin. It can do decently well into frontline. But that still requires you have a good hand. Like, you have to hit the Aichis. Not having close air support just means it's so much easier for your bombers to be picked off, and you also have less draw, and you also have less burst potential. With the exception of Shiden, really. So, I feel this Japan deck can be quite lacking. Britain Air, obviously it's Britain Air. Soviet Italy self-damage, this is going to be a decently strong pick. I have a huge disagreement with his build of it, of course. He is running only 2 SUs, he's running 2 OTs, and only 1 5-year plan, which is the whole point of building Soviet Italy, is that you run 3 Baron Nostrums so you can have the health to play around with 2 5-year plans as your main draw engine outside of the Japan ally version of the deck. Instead, he has opted to go for not that, so I think this deck is somewhat questionably built. And then the German deck, I mean, it's the type of deck where you have Befehlswager's 35Ts, Blitz 1 drops, and Blitzkriegs. You're going to have a base win rate of just the games you high roll. Other than that, I mean, I don't think it's that good. Like, I don't think you can fault much in the deck building. I just don't think it's a good deck. Like, there's a reason people do not traditionally play German-Japan aggro and instead play Japan-German aggro, because this deck is similar to Heinz, except it has less sticking power, which means the lack of draw comes in much more important. And by much more important, I mean much, much worse for the deck. So, with this in mind, if I was head, I would just ban Britain, Japan Air. You don't really have to worry about the self-damage too much. You don't have Jaggro. And if I was Tiger, I would ban the Italy deck. You don't really want to face 4 Careless Talks when you have a 4 aggressive deck lineup. And let's skip ahead, see what they banned. Head banned self-damage, and Tiger banned Air. I don't hate Tiger banning Air. Air is also a very strong deck. I do not understand Head banning self-damage at all. It is very good into your front line, and that is it. That is literally the only... the deck is good into one of your decks. Air is good into arguably 3 of your 4 decks. I mean, I know Frontline is fine into Air, and Italy is probably good into Air. However, you also should expect that there's a good chance your Italy is banned. In that case, you will have Air into Air, which is a 50-50 matchup, and then Soviet into Air, which is a losing matchup. Not a huge fan of this ban from Head. But with that said, let's get into the games. Game 1 is going to be Tiger on Air versus Head on Italy. So looking at Head's hand, knowing that he keeps 2 Careless Talks and From the Deep, I would not keep, I would not have kept From the Deep in that situation. And you see Tiger is running the Sonias, unlike Head, and that is a rough hand from Tiger. Triple airs up. Only thing you can do is hit face. And here, Head's just going to hold up double Careless Talk. I like this. There's nothing in Tiger's deck that he can play yet that would survive 1 Careless Talk, so there's no reason to hold up From the Deep. Here, I think Head should hold up From the Deep and then Careless Talk. There's an argument to just hold up double Careless Talk, because there's 1 card in Tiger's deck which would punish double Careless Talk, which is the Spitfire, and obviously we do see it in Tiger's hand, right? That we shouldn't let that influence what the correct play is. If he is going to play From the Deep, he definitely should play it first, since they trigger in the order you play them in. So if you hold up Careless Talk and then From the Deep, and the opponent does have the Spitfire, it will use both countermeasures when you only needed to use From the Deep. The argument for holding up 2 Careless is you've just seen a convoy. Your opponent is looking to play a lot of units cast. So just having double Careless Talk, they take out multiple units. The one thing that punishes you is the Spitfire. And what order does he do this in? He does the correct order. He does From the Deep and then Careless Talk. And now Tiger has the choice of Type 94, Spitfire. So he can do Type 94's Swordfish Cass, or he can just slam Spitfire. And because you have the Type 94, I'm leaning towards the Type 94 Swordfish Cass play. I don't think you really necessarily need to play around From the Deep. And if your opponent is having a second Careless Talk, the Spitfire is actually a very good play into it. And it's not like Italy has a ton of plays on just turn 3 against air anyways. So he is going to go for this line. He plays the Type 94 first. Good call. Then he plays the Swordfish, which is going to be taken out by the Careless. Good ordering by Head. Not that it would have mattered since Tiger did play Spitfire, but that ordering is important. Now Head can take out the Sonia if he wants with Heinkel, Mare Nostrum. I expect that's what we're going to see since his other play is essentially just pass. And yep, he's just going to go ahead and play the Heinkel, Mare Nostrum, take out the Sonia, heal back to full health, get this draw in his hand, and now Tiger is just going to do Spitfire Airs Up. This is a very easy turn. And Head here, awkward spot, he can just, well, I mean, by awkward spot, I mean he's just going to hit the Spitfire, because he doesn't have a Lion for a day, which you would really want. And, yeah, you don't want to take 6. So yeah, you hit your Spitfire back to hand. If it gets replayed by itself, you can comment. Tiger with essentially nothing else in hand, and the knowledge that his opponent can't really deal with Spitfire. I mean, it wouldn't be insane for Head to have a Lion for a day here, and we just played the Hipper on curve to get the credit to dial in. He's just going to sack the Comet into the Spitfire. I don't hate this. I think he could have also played Panther G Careless Talk. Like, there's the worry of... I mean, I don't even know what the worry is, because you just annihilate the Spitfire on the following turn. Tiger plays Sexton on a raw board. I do not like this. I think this is sort of the tilt setting in. You're like, oh, I've had such a bad hand. He's just had all the Careless Talks. There is no reason to play Sexton on an empty board while you have, and it's going into Annihilation turn. And even if they can't annihilate it, it's then immediately followed by the Dechuma turn. Yeah, there's just no reason to have played Sexton there. HMS Cast, I do like this play. You gotta start getting damage in. And you have the Shelling Airs up to take out like a large threat. Like if this JU comes down, I suspect that's what we'll see. Sudden Strike, good call. JU 88, hold up Careless Talk. When you play this JU 88, you know there's a decent chance it survives, but you see the surprise attack in hand, so you know if there is a second Type 94 Monty Shelling, this JU 88 is going to die. Careless Talk takes out the Gladiator. Sky Barons off the top. Goes for the spoils. This seems weird to me. I mean, he doesn't need to play Sky Barons. He can even just play Jagd Bomber. You've seen your opponent play Sexton. You don't really want a Jagd Bomber or POC at any point in this game. And we see his options like Research, Leopold, Annihilation. I think I would take Annihilation in that position. I don't hate Research. And I guess the argument for Research is if your opponent just Lend-Leases this turn, you can do Research twice. I think I would still prefer to get on board a little. And Tiger is just essentially forced to do air sub trade. Not a whole lot he could do here. Now Head should just get the units on board. Panzer H draw first, then Panther G. And he's just going to case yellow to discard. I do not like this play. You know the card in your opponent's hand is not draw. So your opponent floated 7 credits last turn. And also, you know that it could be a top-decked Ultra. So you know the card off the top was top-decked. And I'm just going to quickly double-check the decks. Because I'm 90% sure Tiger runs Ultra. And checking down his British deck, yes, Tiger does run Ultra. So the top deck card could have been Ultra, which actually would be a decent chance because your opponent floated 7 credits with a card in hand and an empty board, and you saw them play an empty board Sexton. So you know if it's a unit, they would have played it. You know if it was card draw, they would have played it. So there's a chance it could be a handful of orders. It could be another... Well, if it was another air sub, they probably would have played it. So you know it could be a Cass. You know maybe... No, if it was an Empire Strikes, they would have played it. So yeah, you know it could be a Cass or an Ultra. And that's essentially it. So you're just going to immediately spend 5 credits to go into the Ultra to discard, if it's not an Ultra, a Cass and on an empty hand and an empty board. Where the alternative is just play Panther G and set up like a 3-turn lethal. So yeah, the pretty large mistake. Of course, we see it was the Cass, and then Tiger draws Convoy into Wrath Swordfish. I mean, you essentially have to play both of these cards. You don't like it, but there is not a whole lot else you can do. So the Sky Barons is definitely coming out on the Wrath this turn. I suspect we'll see a Panzer H first. You could also just do a Panther G Careless Talk. So he's going to Sky Barons first for card draw, and then go for Panther G Careless Talk. I don't hate this. Because, like, even if your opponent, I don't know, Lend-Leases into an Albacore, you take out the Albacore, and then you have Research to take out the Swordfish. You have a few draws. So he's going to start with the Panzer H. Get some card draw, and I like this. I don't think you really want to play another unit. Oh wait, sorry. For some reason I was thinking the Panther G was pinned. Of course it's not pinned. Yeah, but yeah, just take it out. The Panther G is good. He was really hoping for a Mary Nostrum, I suspect, there. Tiger gets the Monty draw. He passes. I like this. Your only way back into this game is with Lend-Lease into like a 5 damage Empire Strikes at this point. Head plays out the 7th Alpini and holds up Careless Talk. I mean, honestly, I think I kind of would have liked to see upgrade Research to test for Ultra. Well, no. I think that's fine. So Tiger does Monty, he gets a Bomber, and the Empire Strikes. No Lend-Lease, though. Very unfortunate for him. Now Head can do Research to test for Ultra. Is there store case yellow? I kind of would have liked to see the Flying Bomb. Like maybe a Panzer H sort of store Careless Talk. Finds the case yellow. Goes for it because you know there's not an Ultra. Picks up another Mare Nostrum. Yeah. I don't hate this play. It is difficult to imagine your opponent finds a way to remove this board with an Empire Strikes. Like after the discard. My thought process was if you hold up Careless Talk, it's a guarantee just to kill an enemy unit. So if your opponent does go for an Empire Strikes setup, is killing a guaranteed unit better than discarding a random card? I'm not exactly sure. But either way, Head takes that game 1. Just a very favorable matchup. This is kind of why I thought Tiger should ban the German deck. It's just going to give you a free win. Well, it's going to give Head a free win, I should say. And then game 2, oh, missed the mulligan here, is going to be Frontline. Head's Frontline versus Tiger's Air. Looking at these from both perspectives. Tiger, keep Gladiator, keep Air Sup. I don't hate keeping Convoy. Personally, I wouldn't. But if he wants to keep Convoy, go for it. From Head's perspective, keep Patrol, keep Half Track. I would probably keep a 5th Rangers, and then keep 32nd. Doesn't feel great not having any Blitz tanks. But it's not like the worst hand ever, because they do have a lot of answers. Head does mulligan the Tiger. Sorry. Head mulligans the Tiger. Tiger mulligans the Convoy. And Head goes for a full chuck, sends back both 5th Rangers and the Half Track. This is a very risky line. Gets somewhat rewarded for it. I still think I would rather have the Half Track than the Sherman in hand. He's going to start with a 32nd. I actually don't like this. I think I would have started with one of the 1-3 units. Just because this plays really into Albacore. I actually would have played the Red Devils probably, just to essentially stop a turn 2 or a turn 2 Albacore. They can still play it. However, it won't be targeting anything. And Tiger's just going to trade out with the 32nd. I like that. Here, just going to Air Sup and go face. You cannot let this 32nd stick in the front line. And here, Head should use the Greyhound. Do not go for the 32nd 35T. Going for the 32nd 35T here is just leaving you very, very much vulnerable to something exactly like HMS Illustrious, as we see in Tiger's hand. But there's a couple other plays that this is not great too. Like you have, I suppose, the Whirlwind to answer an Albacore coming out. But I just like the Greyhound a lot more since you keep the 35T in hand. You're not wasting damage, because if you trade here, you're kind of wasting damage. And you do have to trade if you're going for this play. You can't go face. So he does trade. Not a fan of this play, and Tiger has the punish. HMS Illustrious take out the 35T, and Head is in a really awkward position, because now he can't deal with any of these things. If you just, like, try to get something big out, like just slam a Sherman, it's very vulnerable to pin, or even just cast kill it. You kind of need to start getting the damage in. Like, I'd hit one of these with a Greyhound, and play out a 32nd. So you're not committing too much to the board if they want to just play an on-curve Empire Strikes, but the 1/3 Greyhound body means that there does need to be another card that comes out from hand to deal with it. And it gets one of them down to a 1/2 body, so you can clean it up with a Whirlwind or a Patrol potentially on the following turn, and then not moving the 32nd up, because obviously you don't move the 32nd up, it's never going to have another turn regardless. And that's exactly what Head does. Very good play from him. And Tiger, I mean, you can just clear the board, but that leaves you kind of vulnerable. It's your best play because you can't really, if you're playing Spitfire this turn, you're not doing anything else. And then if your opponent just has like half track, you're kind of massively set back. 35T is a very good draw to have in your hand for this game. It's not a particularly good card to play this turn. I would just do 32nd and use the Whirlwind to take out one of the Swordfish. Since you've seen 2 air subs now, so you have a general idea that this Whirlwind is going to be relatively safe from much of anything. Instead, Head goes for this line where he does the 35T and the Patrol to get the damage in on the second Swordfish. I do not understand this play at all. I really don't. This play just seems bad to me. It does put Tiger into a bit of an awkward position because he can't actually deal with this 35T without just slamming Monty, which you do not want to do. And because it has 0 op, if you play like something like Spitfire Swordfish, you play directly into Strategic Bombing. If you play well, no, because Stars and Stripes and Strategic Bombing both clear this board. Tiger's taking a bit of risk here. Tiger doesn't have it, but he has a couple different options. He can half-track Spitfire to hand and then move up a Whirlwind, or he can just sack the 35 or the Hellcat into it. I'm a fan of the half-track move up Whirlwind. Like, this gets punished by 2 bombers and Empire Strikes. However, how many bombers have you seen from your opponent already? I suppose actually only HMS, but I mean, HMS is a pretty big one. It means your opponent can't have HMS and Empire. It needs to be 2 bombers Empire. And even if that is the case, both bombers will be pinned, and then you can just move up the Hellcat and kill it. So yeah, Head goes for this exact line. I like this quite a bit. However, that does mean there's 3 units on the board, so Tiger is 100% going to be playing Monty. And he can Raff Whirlwind out of the front line and play Swordfish. That's probably the best line here. Here, easy we can do it for Head. Easy Red Devils we can do it. That's actually a really good draw. And oh, he's going for the Hellcat. Does Tiger run Piracy in his deck? Tiger doesn't even run Piracy, so the reasons to kill this bomber are essentially 0. Like, you kill the bomber because you're afraid of Empire Strikes, but you don't have to be afraid of Empire Strikes if you play We Can Do It. However, this board is still very vulnerable to Empire Strikes. Now, so we see that Tiger doesn't have Empire Strikes in hand to punish this, but I really don't like this play. From Head, it is taking a ludicrous amount of risk in a matchup where you... Well, not a matchup where you don't need to take risk, but in a game state where you don't need to take risk, because he's just kind of ahead on board with a card that will solidify his board position against everything. And yeah, I mean, Tiger just gonna go for the Lend-Lease, see if he can pick up a 3rd air sub. That'd be really good. He finds the Empire Strikes, and with Wellington at 1 cost in hand, Aichi, not the ideal setup. However, Head is now going to be able to We Can Do It on 5 units. The greed paid off. Please, for the love of everything, do not play Strat Bombing here. And he is going to go for the We Can Do It. Now, your leftover credits are a little awkward. You can just go all face. You're definitely moving up the Whirlwind. And I actually do like going all face here because you're limiting your opponent on the number of... One, you're forcing your opponent to spend credits to use these units. And two, you're limiting the number of positions in the support line that are opened to Tiger without trading out these units. And the only way to trade out these units is to double hit them into Hellcat. So I actually really like this play by Head. I feel like it would be very easy for a player to just go for the trades there because you like value trades. But yeah, you do not need to. And here, Tiger, I mean, you're going for a naval supply run play. He's going to play Aichi into the Whirlwind. And then I'm assuming he's going to do cast naval supply run. Take out... I guess he can only really take out one unit. Okay. Sorry, so he's going to double hit into the Whirlwind. That play was most certainly wrong. So if we see what he does in the end, it is play Wellington with Blitz and then naval supply run. Well, I guess the argument is he wants Wellington with naval supply run on it. Whereas if he plays naval supply run first to kill the Whirlwind, to not have to trade in with the Gladiator, he doesn't get the naval supply run buff on the Wellington. I don't see why the naval supply run buff on the Wellington is remotely that important. Because, like, I guess it means your opponent has to hit Hellcat into it rather than 35T and Red Devils. You're dead to Blitzkrieg regardless. You're dead to AoE regardless. And by dead to AoE, I mean you're not actually dead, but you're getting your entire board cleared to AoE regardless. This play seems really strange to me, and also you're valuing +1/+1 on the Aichi over it not being pinned, which is... It seems incredibly incorrect in this situation. But this is the line he goes for, and here we see Head can set up a very nasty strategic bombing. He could also Sherman for Blitzkrieg lethal. Not a huge fan of that. Wait, actually, is this... No, he's 1 credit off lethal. You're staring down 16 damage. The problem is you can't just, like, Sherman go all face with strap bombing in hand to clean up, because your opponent does run Ultra. If your opponent... There's a world where your opponent could, theoretically, still draw their way out. He does go for the strategic bombing. He leaves Aichi alive and pinned. I don't mind this. There's also... He could have killed Aichi beforehand, so that the 3/2 bomber gets killed by the strategic bombing. That would be 3 less damage face, though. Or, sorry, 4 less damage face. And, I mean, Tiger... Yeah, there's nothing he can do. This is just game over. He can't even Lend-Lease into anything because he's played a Monty already. And if he Lend-Leases into Albacore, he means he's not attacking with something else. So, yeah, this is just game. And Head takes a 2-0 series lead. We don't need to see Tiger rope out. Realizing game is over. And now Head just has this Soviet France deck, which he seemed very uncomfortable with in the last OCC clash. He lost on it twice in a row after going up 1-0 in his series. So let's see if he has calmed his nerves on this deck. Game 1 is just going to be essentially a lost matchup. It is going to be Air versus Soviet France. It is almost unwinnable for Soviet France. Tiger keeps T60, mulligans everything else. So why was that mulligan? He sends back Spy Ring. I would have kept Spy Ring for sure. Everything else looked pretty dead. We didn't get to see Tiger's mulligan, but it is... He has 2 Gladiators, HMS, Kitty Hawk, Airsoft. Pretty decent hand. He really wants a Cass. On the other side of the field, Head passing until turn 2. This is a rough hand. Tractor Factories, Winter Offensive, and ISU, these are the 3 most expensive cards in your deck. We just need a 272nd draw at this point. But, I mean, I'm not a fan of running Tractor Factories, and this is one of those reasons. Yes, it's a little bit of extra beef in the late game, but man, do you really want another 8-cost card that does absolutely nothing against aggro? I think the answer is no. Tiger just going to take out this Petlyakov with air superiority and go face. Chike is a decent pickup, but you have to play off curve, so he's going to go for the T60, which I like. Now, Tiger can go for the Kitty Hawk double sack. He can push up a unit HMS and hit the T60. I'm not a huge fan of the Kitty Hawk double sack because your opponent does run 2 Winter Warfares, and that just seems like you're unnecessarily giving them the ability to come back on board by taking out these 2 gladiators. Now, we see Head's hand, that's not what he has. I think he has to defend in depth this Kitty Hawk and play Chika. You don't really want to defend in depth the Kitty Hawk, and there's an argument to keep it back to take out bombers in the future, but your hand has no more guards in it. So you cannot really afford to be taking too much damage. And this is a really awkward spot for Tiger. He can just hold up the Ultra if he wants and go face. And that's exactly what he's going to do. If you are Head, you have to 100% be aware of the Ultra in this position. I would just play the T-34, to be completely honest. Like, yes, maybe your opponent takes it out with tempo on surprise attack. He's instead going to call to the colonies directly into the Ultra. And maybe Head was looking at the wrong deck list. Like, it seems very strange to me that Head would not play around Ultra several games in a row. Because I think Head isn't running Ultra in his air. I don't know exactly if it's Head, but one of the players in this tournament is just not running Ultra. It's not unheard of for top players to take Ultra out of their deck. But Tiger 100% is running Ultra, as we just saw. I like the shelling here. You want to get the shelling out early. You see your opponent's hand is very, very slow. And you also really want to take out this Engineers Battalion, because that is one of the ways Soviets can come back in these lost matchups, is by just getting like 20 plus healing out of Engineers. He's going to trade off the Gladiator. That I'm not sure why you don't trade off the Type 94. Then he's going to shelling to pin the Eshak, surprise attack the Engineers, and go face. Now this does seem exceptionally greedy to me, because your opponent can just slam a guard and then suddenly you can't kill it. I guess you have Wrath in hand, so if they slam guard, you can retreat the Wrath. Or so you can retreat the guard with the Wrath and then trade. It seems a little greedy for a play you're doing to get 1 damage in. I like Wrath, because if you go for the Wrath play, you can get down 2 bombers alongside the Wrath and take out the Eshak. Lend-Lease here just seems like an unnecessary tempo loss, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Going to take out the Eshak, get the Wrath down, get the Swordfish down. Slightly incorrect positioning, you should always play Aichi on the right instead of the left of... you should always play it on the right of all of your units on the right, rather than on the left to the right of the HQ. Because when the Aichi dies, the 3-2 Aichi comes back on the far right no matter what. So this way, if you get another Japanese unit, you're going to want to play it on the far right to be positioned between casts, and then your opponent kills it and you have 2 non-British air units next to each other. However, Defend in Depth is just going to take it out, Head trying to set up a Winter Offensive play to clear this board. And the idea with Winter Offensive is Head does not, or Tiger does not find Cass. He actually finds double Cass, and if he plays double Cass, he can't really get punished by anything. Like, Partisans does not clear 2 units. No, I guess if he double Casses, they can do Partisans on Wrath to kill Swordfish. Tiger instead is just going to go face. I don't hate this because if your opponent does have the Winter Offensive to clear, they drop down to 8, and then you just do Swordfish double cast, and you're 2 off lethal. Head slams the Winter Offensive, and it's suddenly looking a lot like you really didn't want to play your only healing card in hand directly into the Ultra. And Tiger's just going to flood the board with Bombers. Double cast, hit face. And, I mean, Head could theoretically hold on a turn with depth charges. I mean, you're still dead to Empire Strikes, and if you're depth charging, you have literally nothing else to do in your hand. Partisans doesn't accomplish anything here. Hammer draw, that is unfortunate. There's no ground units on the board for your opponent at the moment. He finds the depth charges, he hangs on one more turn, but he needs a Winter Offensive top deck. But even then, the Aichi will still be left over. Tiger's just going to clear out the board. Plays a 4th Swordfish. Not exactly sure why. It doesn't matter because, again, the one board clear here is Winter Warfare ISU, but Winter Warfare will leave the Aichi. Winter Warfare ISU will leave the 3-2 Aichi left on board to clean up the game. And he doesn't actually find the Winter Warfare, he finds a second Hammer. That's unfortunate for Head, and Tiger takes a game. However, it's still 2-1 for Head. And we will move on to game 4. It's going to be the Japan version of this deck, once again, against Soviets. And once again, this is why I think Head probably should have banned one of these Brit decks. And by one of these Brit decks, I mean the Brit Air deck. It just seems very strange to me that he would leave. Like, his lineup doesn't feel like it's particularly targeting air. Like, the Soviet deck can't beat air. If you're trying to build an anti-air lineup, you don't bring the Soviet deck. You just don't bring Soviets. Like, you bring Jaguar inside of this deck. And instead, we are once again witnessing a Soviet control versus air matchup. However, this is Japan-Britain air, which means a lot less card draw, a lot less burst, a lot less buffs. Which means it's way easier for Head to win. 39th draw is going to help that a lot. A double defend in depth is going to help that a lot. He's just going to defend in depth the Swordfish because he wants to 39th this Aichi. We see Tiger actually has the second Aichi in hand and the Audacity. This is about as much, like, this is essentially the best case scenario hand for Tiger. And I mean, Head here can just use a second defend in depth on the Swordfish. You can also play Chaika, but that doesn't accomplish a lot. I guess Chaika, Chaika makes it slightly awkward for your opponent. They have to hit it once, and then maybe airs up, and then your Winter Warfare to take out one of the Aichis, and you can defend in depth to clean it up, and then you 39th to take the other Aichi and hit the Swordfish, and maybe things are looking good. Unfortunately, well, actually he's going to Winter Warfare first, so this stops Tiger from hitting the Chaika, which is an interesting line. Tiger, if he really wants to, can just remove the Chaika with Air Sup and Audacity. In this position, I think you're fine to just Convoy, though. Because you're not really scared of your opponent killing one of these Aichis with the Chaika, because you're perfectly fine getting a 5-2 Smokescreen Bomber that the Soviet deck can't really deal with. So he is just going to Convoy. It's Type 94. Again, you're fine if your opponent hits the Chaika into that, so he's just going to play it. And here, I think you just kill the Aichi and defend in depth. You got 39th already. I feel like if you 39th here, you are somewhat setting up a Empire Strikes. Because your opponent can just kill one of the Aichis, move up Type 94. Oh, sorry, you take the Aichi, your opponent can kill the first body with the Type 94, and then play Empire Strikes. However, is just defend in depthing. Yeah, he's gonna 39th the Aichi. It's hard to say this is wrong, just 39th on curve to take arguably the best 2-drop in the game right now. Really hard to say no to that. However, we know for a fact that this is going to be an Empire Strikes. Is there actually any way to set up an Audacity? I don't think so. And there goes the Empire Strikes, takes out everything. Well, not everything, he's still left with a 39th, but this is going to accomplish nothing. And you can defend in depth the other Gladiator. And maybe play a Petliakov. That does mean you are going to be leaving this Type 94 on the board. So maybe don't play Petliakov, maybe take out the Swordfish. Play... I mean, Bryansk doesn't actually accomplish anything here, so maybe just play Heroes of the Soviet Union. See what you get, try to get a good card for the next turn, maybe KV. Although with Surprise Attack in hand, this is still very dangerous. But, if you think about this position, at this point of the game last game, by turn 6 he was essentially dead lost last game. Whereas now, it's rough. Your opponent has 2 bombers. You can answer one of them, but then they still have an Aichi left on board, but you're in a fine position. Head's going to go for the Heroes of the Soviet Union. I like this. Gets an armored train, not the best thing ever. And then he's going to trade and play the Petliakov. I also don't hate this. You're calling your opponent's bluff of, just like, yeah, I don't need to remove this Gladiator, or this Swordfish side. You don't have any close air supports. You're not going to just second Empire this board. Unfortunately, it plays directly into the Audacity, which, single copy, I don't think you can really play around that, but man, does that blow head out of this game. Defend in Depth is going to come out, take out the Aichi. Draw last. I mean, there's no card in your deck that you're going to be playing over taking out a 5-2 Smokescreen Bomber. However, still just good practice to draw first. And Tiger here is just going to play the AA gun, probably Sonya, double hit face. I would like to see the Sonya come out here, because even, again, if there's a Winter Offensive here, you're left with a Bomber on board, you draw a card. Getting the Sonya down means that if a huge guard comes out, you can surprise attack and kill it. And we see Head's hand, it's 5 guards. However, the 3 units on Tiger's side of the board, none of them are affected by guard. Head's best play is probably just 272nd. Actually, that's not true. You can Naval Brigade. Although maybe you want to be saving this Naval Brigade. Yeah, I guess you're just 272nd. Because if you play Naval Brigade, your opponent just kills it immediately. And you've essentially accomplished nothing. Whereas this 272nd, it is a threat. Your opponent can't kill it. However, we've seen Tiger's hand. He can just pin it twice in a row and go well face. And actually, you don't need to pin it, because it's an infantry. So you can actually just go well face and not pin it. And if your opponent red banners, you can double pin and go face. I mean, Call to the Colonies, you don't really want to draw with that, but you also don't really want to heal with that at the moment. Push up 272nd also needs to happen. So he takes out Swordfish, pushes up, he's limiting the amount of damage he can take this turn. Naval Operation draw from Tiger means that this board can just be kept pinned for the next, well, very long time. However, do you have the damage to close this out? Because Head's deck has a decent chunk of healing. With this Call to the Colonies. So if there is some sort of clear, like an ISU Winter Offensive, I mean, this board is even kind of vulnerable to a Winter Warfare and maybe a couple of the cards. The Call to the Colonies coming out, the T60 is a good draw because it means it can actually threaten things in the support line. It's a 3 damage Empire Strikes. you can trade out, play a Sonya, do a 4 damage Empire Strikes, and then use Surprise Attack and Sonya Attack to take out the ISU. So yeah, you can essentially just fully clear the board. There won't be a full cleared board because there's a Bryansk left over, which you could theoretically attack, but there's no reason to. That's the play that immediately jumps out to me as correct. And it looks like that's what he's going to do. Hits the Type 94 into the 272nd, plays Sonya, plays Empire Strikes. Surprise attack, attack with Sonya into the ISU. With the IS-2. The T-34 means that Head is going to be able to take out one of these things, but again, he's taking a ton of damage. He's dropping down to 6 health. Winter Offensive does not help him here. Tractor Factories does not help him here. That's the second time Tractor Factories has just been a dead card in his hand. I mean, you just have to move up and kill a Sonya. And you drop down to 1 health. Okay, he's going to kill the AA gun. Takes more damage off the board. Does draw your opponent a card, though. And it draws into Rule Disguise, which is going to make this board even harder to deal with for Tiger. And I don't see why you would play Lend-Lease here. There's no lethal outs for you this turn, so I don't see why you don't just draw for Lend-Lease next turn. It draws into a couple more air subs. He can go face for 3 and air sub the T-34, which is what he's doing. So your opponent can't Winter Offensive, and they need to heal or you kill them from hand next turn. And none of that is healing, so this game is going to be over. Head knows it already. He can't even survive on board. And that is going to be going to Game 5. Head losing with the Soviet deck to air twice in a row. And this is why you gotta ban one of these air decks. Like, your Soviet deck versus self-damage would be a very, very favored matchup for you. And instead, you decide to ban that because you're afraid of it into mid-range. And, I mean, mid-range into self-damage is a more winnable matchup than Soviet France into air, and your opponent has 2 of them. Yeah, a huge mistake in the ban phase of this game. However, last game is going to be against this really weird German-Japan aggro deck. This is going to be Head's, by far Head's best chance at winning with this deck. That is not the hand you want to see. I just full mulligan that. I want to take a look at Tiger's mulligan here. Because I'm very curious how you mulligan on this deck. There's a lot of 1-drops. He chooses to keep Type 94 22nd. That seems very strange to me, considering your opponent runs 2 Winter Warfares. Why you would choose to keep 2 1-drops, one of which is a card that gets better over time, like the longer it sticks on the board. But he mulligans into Bicycle Regiment 35T, and Head's side of the board not looking great. He's going to have guards for days past a certain point, but with this Blitzkrieg in hand and another 35T, Tiger might just win on turn 4. Okay, we see the first rifles. Yeah, he can't go for the autocannon. He needs to be a shark here, essentially. He needs to sense the blood in the water. Go for the 35T hit face and Type 94. Panzer A also would be fine because you can push up Panzer A Blitzkrieg. It's essentially the same thing. I would actually prefer the Panzer A because it's slightly less weak to Winter Warfare. And you just go face. You hit your opponent to 10, and this is going to be Blitzkrieg lethal through first rifles. And yeah, that's just game. Very unfortunate hand from Head. Very, very fortunate hand from Tiger. Don't be baited by the Sendai. It's Blitzkrieg lethal. And yeah, that is going to be the first series. Had been reverse sweeped on the Soviet France deck. Once again, not a huge fan of his build of the deck. Not a huge fan of how he plays the game. How he plays the deck. And yeah, Tiger. Also thought Tiger made a few odd misplays, but yeah, hard to say anything wrong about a reverse sweep. And that is going to be the first set of the game. You see Tiger going up to the semifinals, and the next quarterfinals we're going to look at is me versus Noen. So let's take a quick look at the stat cards. There you go. There is Noen's. There is my own stat card. This total matches is incorrect. I've not played 62,000 matches. If you do the math here, these will add up. And let's take a look at the deck lists. So, from Noen, we have Frontline, and this is a more traditional version of the Frontline. This is a version of the Frontline that's very popular in the Chinese community. You still have the double dive bombing. He has not gone on to the patrol train yet, and he has double 22nd infantry. I strongly disagree with 22nd infantry in Frontline. I think it's a huge mistake. Then he has his Brit-Japan air deck. This is another deck that Noen kind of builds in a weird way. We see he does not have any Sonias, but he has 3 Type 93s for a little bit more aggression into the deck. He has a single copy of the 26 Engineers Regiment to give his units a bit more health. He has double Naval Supply Run for, again, more aggression. It's just a wild deck. He's also managed to fit double RAF in there, which is kind of mind-blowing. Oh, I guess it's because he doesn't run Wellington. I had not really looked at that. He also does not run Ultra. So Noen is the not Ultra player. And not running Wellington is actually very interesting. And then he has Jagro with, again, a couple cards here. He only runs 1 Yokosuka. So that he runs 1 Shinodo and 2 Mito regiments. He likes those 3 drops in there, give it a little bit more sticking power after Feint. And then last but not least, he has his bizarre Soviet-US ramp deck. This is the deck that got 3-0'd. Well, I actually played Noen in the 3rd place match of the last clash. I beat him 3-1. This Soviet deck got 3-0'd. And I think it got 2-0'd in the semifinals. So he's lost 5 straight games on this deck in tournaments. He has changed it up a little bit since that event, and I do think the changes are generally positive. He's made it slightly better into air, slightly better into just aggro all around. He's taken out a B-17. And then we have my lineup. Frontline, this is how I build the deck. 2 patrols, no 20 seconds, no dive bombings. The double Greyhounds, just really low to the ground, low order count, go all in on units, blitzkrieg. My build of air, which I think is sort of the more traditional version of building this Japan air deck, with double Sonia, double Aichi, double Type 94. I've gone down to 2 air superiorities in favor of Kitty Hawk Piracy. I've tried 3 air superiorities at the cost of a Piracy or a Kitty Hawk. I just really like those 2 cards in there. And then we have just Jagro deck, how I've been building Jagro. It's 2 order Feigned. Noen also had 2 order Feigned. It is worth noting. And then last but not least, I have Soviet France. And yeah, I've thrown in a Scorched Earth since the last clash. At the cost of a phony war. The version of the deck I had in the last clash was meant to target discard. I didn't think there was going to be a ton of discard at this tournament. I was right. I think there was only 1. So I changed this deck accordingly to be a slightly more anti-aggro. And then on bans, I mean, I'm just gonna ban air, because it's air. I do not like. He has Jagro and Frontline, which are both just fine matchups across the board, and then he has his terrible Soviet deck. I'm just gonna ban air. And then from Noen's perspective, I mean, I think Noen should probably just ban air as well. Yeah. But if we take a look at the bans, I banned air. Noen decided to ban my Soviet France. I have no idea why. Maybe it's just because I beat his US or his Soviet US with my Soviet France in the last tournament, and he thought that's a bad matchup. Again, you should not ban a deck because there was 1 bad matchup, unless all of the other matchups on all of the other decks are good. Yeah, no idea why he doesn't ban air here. And let's get into game 1. Do we miss the mulligan for this? We do. So we started in game 1. It is Jagro versus the Soviet-US deck. No one always starts with this deck for some reason. So my idea with starting with Jagro is Jagro into Soviet-US is the best matchup I have into it, and he's going to start with Soviet-US, and that's exactly what we got. Here, I think I probably should have just played Signal Regiment on turn 1, because I know he runs 4 Bloody Sickles, he's going to mulligan 4 Bloody Sickles. I think this was actually a pretty big mistake, because if I play Signal on 1, I mean, maybe he sickles it, he probably doesn't sickle it, he probably just passes. And then I play Bicycle Regiment on turn 2, he then has to choose between sickling it or playing War Machine. Whereas this way I do Bicycle Regiment on 1, he sickles it on 1, and then I play whatever, Signal on 2, or any card I draw into on 2, and then he plays War Machine on 2. So this is just sort of feeding into his curve a bit. This is a bit of a mistake. However, if we look at my hand, I was able to keep Raiding Brigade and Feigned Retreat off the mulligan. The Raiding Brigade for Engineers or Bryansk Regiments, the Feigned Retreat because it's Feigned Retreat. So no one has the classic Sickle on 1, War Machine on 2, 5th Rangers on 3. He has this in basically every game. Again, why I should not have played Bicycle on 1. Here, I'm just going to pass. 5th Rangers comes out to the front line. I'm saying this both because I remember what happened, but also because these are just the correct plays from both of us so far. Here, Sendai on the 5th Rangers, because if Sendai dies, 5th Rangers comes back as a 4 operation cost 4/4, since it is a deployment, go down to 1 or 0 op or gain +4/+4, so the base body is a 4 op 4/4. So Sendai comes out, Sendai on the right side, so Yokosuka can be a 3 attack. And here, no one should just play Yak, which is what he does. 35T, Type 93, go face. So there's an argument for pushing up Sendai. The reason I didn't push up Sendai is because the opponent can just trade into it with Yak, and then use the 4/4 5th Rangers to trade into the 35T. The reason I probably should have done that just anyways is I have Desperate Measures in hand, so if he does that play, he's using 6 credits, takes out 2 of my units, takes another 2 damage from the Signal Regiment, and then I have Desperate Measures clear the board, and then 4 credits left over to play whatever's in my hand into a turn 7 Feigned on 6 credits. Yeah. I think I should probably, at the very least, I should have thought more about moving up this Sendai. Here, no one can just Yak, take out the Type 93 5th Rangers, take out the 35T. A bit weird to me that he chooses to put the 35T on the left side of the HQ. So, well, first of all, it's just incorrect for him to be playing all of these units on the right side of the HQ because of the way Sendai works with guards. All of these units should be on the left because Sendai on a guard, Sendai's going to come back on the far right. I just choose to play Feigned Retreat here because I'm at full health. This 5th Rangers will almost 100% die if it moves up. And the We Could Do It would have posed some really difficult problems, but with Signal Regiment, it's possible to just burn through anyways. However, no one top decks KV immediately following Feigned Retreat, which means he instantly wins the game. By instantly wins the game, I mean if I can draw into a Sendai Regiment, I can draw into 2 Type 94s. Unfortunately, that does not happen. Here, no one can just... I mean, you want to keep this KV alive. You want to get some damage in. You can push 5th Rangers. Go face with Yak. Bryansk. You can go face with Yak. Red Banner. First Rifles. You can go face with Yak, play another Yak. That's actually probably your best play. You drop me to 8. You know I have no guards in hand. That way, well, you drop me to 8, I go down to 6. And I have to take out KV immediately. And then I also have to take out 2 fighters. It's going to start with a Sickle on the Type 93. I don't hate that. and he's just going to move up and attack in with the KV. I'm also fine with this because there's no amount of blitz units that I could draw to take this out because I'm dead when I play 2 units. So actually KV in the front line isn't particularly less protected. And yeah, that needed to be a Sendai off of the Akita. It's not. This game is over. And that is... I'd just like to quickly point out, this KV dealt 17 damage. The top deck KV on turn 7 directly into Feigned deals 17 damage in 2 turns. Pretty unfortunate. However, I could have played that game slightly better. It would not have changed the outcome of the game. KV top deck into Feigned is just going to happen. But that is going to be game 1. No one wins with the deck in his lineup that I think all of my decks beat probably 80-85% of the time. Like, I think if I was down 0-2 with just the Soviet deck left, I think I would be more likely to win the series than no one. I think I would be more likely to reverse sweep no one on that deck than him winning a single game. But unfortunately, he does win that first game. Game 2 is going to be Air into Jagro. Taking a look at this mulligan, from me, I keep the Type 94 because it's a 1-drop and I'm going first, and I keep Empire Strikes because it's one of the best cards against Jagro. On no one's side of the board, he should be keeping Errato, Raiding Brigade. After that, it gets a little bit tricky, because this Bicycle Regiment could be used to pull a beef if you find a beef. However, if you don't find a beef, it's just going to be taken out. I think I'd send back Type 93. Well, actually, Type 93 is really good with Errato, in particular. And if you play a 1-drop, you're going to be playing Errato. So I think I'd send back the Bicycle Regiment and the Type 94 and keep the other 3. We will see what no one does on this mulligan. So it's back Type 94. Interesting that he's thinking about keeping Bicycle. I guess he's thinking if he gets a Befehlswagen would be the reason. Like, he has 2 cards to draw for a Befehlswagen and he wants to keep the option of blitzing up. Either way, I'm not a fan of that. I think I'd actually keep Type 94 sooner than keeping Bicycle. And he's just going to drop Befehlswagen off the top. But he also drew Cavalry off the top, so he could have still sent back the Bicycle. That is unfortunate. You should keep an eye on my reaction in the bottom left corner of the screen. So I saw no one kept 4 cards in hand going second as Jagro, so I'm expecting the Befehlswagen. I'm like ready for it. I'm already thinking, what do I do when he pulls a Befehlswagen? And I'm just thinking, please don't have double Befehlswagen. And here we see the Bicycle Regiment comes out and pulls top-decked Befehlswagen, which means he kept 3 other cards in hand, none of which were Befehlswagen, but then he drew into the Befehlswagen in one of his 2 cards he drew by turn 1. Here, just Type 93, take out the Swordfish. Here I can go for Type 94, double pin Befehlswagen, trade out the Type 93. I think just playing Convoy here is better. Because if the opponent, if no one trades Befehlswagen into the Type 93, I can just Empire Strikes to clear. And if he doesn't, I can just play a British unit, Cass, and trade on the following turn. And that way I'm not super down on tempo. So Convoy into second Cass, second Convoy, that's not what I want to be seeing. Yeah, no one here. I think he does just have to trade into it. It plays into Empire Strikes, but you're not playing Raiding Brigade on that. And you're definitely not just leaving the Type 94 alive with a cap in the front line. So yeah, I think he is kind of forced into this play, and this play gets immediately punished by Empire Strikes. So despite the very strong start from no one, it's clear board by turn 4. Which means, of course, he's going to top deck Warble Wind on curve. Yeah, Wirbelwind there is better than the Mito. I find a third cast. Here it's just going to be Albacore. I can do Type 94 double pin. I actually prefer the Albacore single pin. Keeping the surprise attack in hand, that's going to be important if he just like slams a Shide and slams a key. Also, I was thinking that there's like a decent chance that this Albacore is just going to die anyways. Here, Raiden Blade on the Albacore. I mean, you don't actually have to, since it is pinned. You're worried about more casts coming out, though, so Errata, Raiden Brigade. Errata finds the Desperate Measures. He's 2-order Feigned, which means the one other order in his deck is Feigned Retreat. So he now has 2 draws for Feigned, second Errata or Feigned itself. I'm just going to Convoy, because again, the cards in my hand do absolutely nothing. Here, Gladiator cast, trade, keep the unit alive. There was also the play of Albacore Surprise Attack, take out Errata. That play just plays directly into Desperate Measures, though, since I don't have the credits to get out the cast. And here, there's absolutely no reason to push up the Type 94. I'm just going to hold it back for it. If it survives, another cast. And also, it just like stops Akita trading into it for potential Akita procs. And here, I think no one should just Errata into the Type 94, push up Mito, push up Cavalry. I mean, actually, you don't need to kill this Type 94 per se. I still think you should, because you have this Desperate Measures in hand. So, you know it's never getting too far out of hand. It's also a ground unit, which means your Blitz unit's going to hit it out of the front line. He's going to Sendai the Gladiator, Cavalry push up. I'm not a huge fan of this. This seems particularly weak to either Albacore or HMS Illustrious, even just an air sup. Here, again, 4th cast draw. I need units, which is why I do Albacore Empire Strikes to kill the Sendai. And get back the close air support. Or sorry, get back the Gladiator for the close air support on 2 units. And it's actually funny, in this situation I was thinking I was just going to be dead lost, because I'm like, well, my opponent just slams Feigned. Because I still knew he had an order in his hand from the Albacore. I was also thinking Desperate looked kind of good last turn over Sendai. So here, Piracy, Cass, get everything out of Akita range. Trying to decide which unit to play Piracy on. I think playing Piracy on the Gladiator is better, because the opponent is going to want to Sendai the Bomber. And this way, if he does like Shiden, for example, he could Shiden into the Bomber to keep Shiden alive. He can't Shiden into the Fighter because of Piracy. So here, just going to pin the Akita. Don't let Akita procs. Keep these units alive for as long as possible. Well, I'd keep these units at full health for as long as possible. And here, I mean, here's just a pretty easy play for no one. Just play all the cards in your hand. Play Yokosuka in the middle. Play Desperate Measures. There's nothing else to do. Hope you draw Errata or Feigned Retreat. And if you look at my reaction in the bottom right corner, I start to clap. I start to do the, like, oh my god, yep, you hit 2 Blitz 1-drops into Feigned on 8. And then he plays Desperate Measures. And I'm like, oh wait, okay, I've actually probably won this game. It's certainly not over yet. Convoy draw helps. Air sub's alright. This is a little difficult to play, though. I think Air Sub Cavalry, Albacore into Akita, and then I can hit the Yokosuka. Akita trades out the Bomber, and then I can hit Gladiator into the Yokosuka, push Piracy, play Aichi. Type 93 draw from no, and that's very unfortunate. I'm just gonna move this right along. Kitty Hawk draw. I can just go all face, Kitty Hawk out the Type 93. Here I was thinking about, like, is there any reason not to, like, I was thinking about, like, the Shiden can stop the bomber if I go face. But then I was like, wait, if he draws Shiden, I just kill him because of the ground units if I trade out. Whereas if I go face with the bomber, he draws Shiden, he can do Type 93 into the Paracy, and then Shiden into the Gladiator, and suddenly I've lost lethal on board. So it just kind of goes to show that there is still ways you can lose that game, even from such a dominant position, and that is going to tie up game 2, or the series 1-1 after game 2. So yeah, actually really solid play from both of us. I think this is easily the highest. I know it's a little conceited to say because I'm in it, but I think this is easily the highest level quarterfinals that we saw in this Ultimate. I thought no one played on point. I thought I played pretty well, especially after that first game. Game 3 is going to be a Jagro mirror in this mulligan. Keep Bicycle because it gets traded out. 35T is also good to keep just because, yes, there's a very high chance that my Bicycle regiment just gets traded out on 1 with his own Blitz 1-drop. However, if he doesn't, if he has a Type 93 or a Type 94, the 35T is going to just be a massive punish. And in this matchup, you prefer to go second. So the 35T here means that if no one hits a bad hand, this is going to give me a better chance to sort of regain that advantage. From no one's perspective, you see double Befehlswagen. You really want to keep double Befehlswagen, but that means you're mulliganing 3 cards. I don't hate keeping Akita. I think I would keep 1 Befehlswagen and keep Akita and mulligan the other 3. There's also just no reason to keep double Befehlswagen because of the power and consistency at drawing desperate measures in this matchup. Also, just Akita take, you can easily get a 2-for-1 against double Befehlswagen. Double Befehlswagen is just not that strong in this matchup. You see, from my perspective, I got a second 1-drop and a Befehlswagen, so I'm going to have my own turn 1 Befehlswagen. And no one's thinking long and hard about keeping this double Befehlswagen start. I really think he should only keep 1 in the Akita. But you see, he's already keeping the Akita. That's very good. Akita is just so powerful in this matchup. And also part of the reason why going second is so big is there's so many ways to just deal with the opponent's units, and there's so little burst damage in this deck that it's all about board control. So you want to... And because of that, it's all about hand size. And also, there's so many more reactive cards in Jagro. And by reactive, I include just having blitz cards. Like, if you spend a turn moving stuff to the front line, your opponent spends a turn trading out your front line, you've essentially gone equal. So, with the advantage of the person who trades out gets better control over how the trades go down and what trades with what, etc. So I start with Bicycle Regiment, because Bicycle Regiment is the weaker of the 2, and if the opponent is going to have a Blitz unit, he's going to have it on 1 and trade into the Bicycle, and if he doesn't, then Bicycle is actually better than Yokosuka. Well, it's kind of the same, but Type 93 draw could mean it's better. Here, no one just plays Akita. I don't hate this. I don't really understand why you don't play Whirlwind, because if you play Whirlwind, there's not a huge punish. Like, if I do Type 93 trade beef into Whirlwind, you're perfectly happy with that. And if you play Whirlwind and I just flood the board and go face, which I think is a reasonable response to playing a Whirlwind, you can do desperate measures, take the front line, pull a beef, and suddenly you're just, like, hard 1 on tempo. Whereas just playing this Akita, it's not terrible. You're definitely not sad in no one's position about playing Akita in this situation. I just think it's not nearly as good because you're probably just going to bait out a trade. From a good player, I think you're going to bait out a trade. And if a trade happens, then this desperate measures in hand is looking worse. There's a good chance you're not taking the front line anymore. Yeah. And here, I do actually have to just go for the trade. Now the question is, do I play 35T, go face with both tanks, and then trade? And then I thought, well, no, that plays terrible because it loses to Desperate Measures. Or just go all face. Then there's the Whirlwind trade, so that there is a 2/3 chance the Befehlswagen survives. Or there is just trade immediately, so there's a 50-50 that it hits face, which is by far the best case scenario for me. So, I do think just trading the Yokosuka into the Akita first, pushing up Whirlwind regardless of outcome, is the correct play. Now, obviously I want the Akita to hit face. And, yeah, this just shows how strong Akita is. Like, I'm going first in this matchup, and I pulled a turn 1 beef, but suddenly I have less cards in hand, I only have a 2 health lead, and Akita gets a 2-for-1, and no one is now 6 cards up. Well, sorry, not 6 cards up. 4 cards up, arguably 3 because I have a unit on board, but this also shows that Whirlwind is slightly better because the Akita play, obviously, you hit the 50-50, so it's quite good, but if I still had a Befehlswagen here, things would be looking not as good. Here, you could just Shinhodo. It's like a little weak into... I don't really see a better play. I think you should just Shinhodo. It's going to Type 94 Whirlwind. Not as huge a fan of this, because if I do have another Blitz tank, and that cavalry is going to let me Blitz out this 35T, that's a very good draw. It means that this Type 94, you're just giving me value trades. You could see me gritting because I'm like, yeah, he doesn't run Bombing Raid, I'm going to play into Bombing Raid as much as possible, just as a joke. So here, obviously, Desperate Measures is going to be quite good. You can do Desperate Measures, trade Whirlwind into Whirlwind, take the front line, you pull beef. And with the Errado in hand, that means that's a guaranteed Feigned. And that is the strength of double Feigned. Like, I'm strongly on double order Feigned, and this is the strength. The odds that you draw one of your orders in the game, decently high. And the fact that drawing one of your orders immediately means both Errados are guaranteed Feigned, if the first order wasn't Feigned, is so strong. Whereas in 3-order Feigned, like, this Errado has now a 50-50. Because you do Desperate Measures, you now have a 50-50. And no one just draws Feigned Retreat naturally. Which is arguably bad for him, because you're essentially losing a draw, but it's Feigned Retreat in hand before turn 6, so draw does not matter at all. And here, we see my reaction. This is a very unfortunate series of events. I suppose we should talk about what I picked off of Panzer H. So there's the argument for just picking the cavalry regiment. There's the argument for picking the Akita, which is, in the future, it can feasibly trade out 2 things. My idea is, I want to remove his units from the board now. Like, I don't want him to start getting the damage in, because he doesn't have a ton of cards in hand, so there's a possibility I can just grind this out and see who draws Feigned first. And that's going to involve taking as little damage as possible. Also, I don't really have a response to a big thing, so if he was able to just, like, go all face, sorry, if he's just able to go all face, then, and like, slam like a Shiden or a Key, that's going to be very, very bad. And also, if I pick Akita next turn, I can't do Akita trade with Panzer H, push up Panzer H 22nd. I do not have the credits for that. That's one off. So I pick Cavalry. And then here, the reason I do Cavalry into the Befehlswagen is I still have a Bicycle and a Yokosuka in deck, which are both 1-cost blitzes. However, I have a Errado, a Shiden, and a Key in my deck, and Dina. So, there's an argument for killing the Whirlwind, because it's going to pin those things. However, I also have this Panzer H on board. which there's a good chance this Panzer H is going to be traded with this Wirbelwind. Which is why I tried out the Befehlswagen. I still think trading out the Befehlswagen probably correct. However, no one chooses to Sendai the Panzer H, and I draw Key, which is a hilarious punish because I also know he has the surprise attack in hand, meaning I can't even play Key because it will immediately die for 1 credit. So, I 20-second pass. Here, no one can Shinhodo the 22nd. Yeah. Plays like a little bit into Desperate Measures, but you have Feigned in hand. I'm not a fan of Shinhodo face. You can see me praying there. I'm praying that he goes face so I can trade out the 22nd into the Wirbelwind. I do think trading is correct for him. He finds the correct play. I draw Bicycle Regiment, which means I can play the Key. And it's actually really funny because if I had traded out the Wirbelwind, and the Key just was the next card in my was not the next card in my deck, then I would have drawn the Bicycle Regiment and been punished for not trading into the beef. So I get the Key down. However, no one can just play out the Type 94, or sorry, the Type 93, get out the Cavalry, hit face with the Shinhodo, and just pin the Key and essentially set up a 2-turn lethal with Errata in hand. Sorry, not Errata, with Feigned in hand. And here, I have a decent chance of getting Desperate Measures, whether drawing it naturally or finding an Errata and winning the 50-50. There's also like Dina into Errata to win the 50-50. Like, I'm not saying it's like I'm favored to find the Desperate Measures. I'm just saying there's a non-zero chance to get the Desperate Measures. I could get the Errata. And here, unfortunately, Errata finds Feigned, which means this game is over. And yeah, just unfortunate series of events. Finding Errata slightly too late. No one having the Desperate Measures. Going second, winning the Akita 50-50. Drawing the Key after not killing the Wirbelwind. Just a series of unfortunate events in the ordering of the decks. And with that, no one takes a 2-1 series lead and goes down to just having Frontline left. So, we'll get into game 4. It is going to be Jagro versus Frontline. This is a matchup slightly favored for Jagro. So here, I like my mulligan that I'm doing now. Send back 35T, send back Sendai Regiment, keep Befehlswagen, keep Type 94. Because the US has no way of getting units to the front line on turn 1, meaning this Type 94 is still a guaranteed Befehlswagen just on the following turn. From no one's perspective, yeah, keep Greyhound for sure, keep Combat Engineers, keep Dive Bombing. You don't want both Combat Engineers, and yeah, send back 99 if you're going second. I like this mulligan from both of us. I'm assuming, yeah, he does make that mulligan in the end. And here, I would just play Combat Engineers. Combat Engineers gives you the most flexible options. You can 35T on the following turn. You can, to take out the Type 94, you can dive bombing attack with it. You can Greyhound attack. Here, this is an easy Panzer 35T into Type 94 play. That's exactly what he does. And on my side of the board, 22nd, very easy. It's very difficult for Frontline to be able to answer this. So if this can stick, this is going to give me the draw necessary to come back from the fact that I am once again going first. This is a matchup where going first is not as bad as in the mirror. I still think I would rather go second. No one has the dive bombing to take out the 22nd Infantry, which is unfortunate for me. And then he has the, he's just going to full trade out the board and play a Greyhound. So here, Type 93 draw is massive. Easily the best draw in my deck. I guess maybe Raiding Brigade is comparable, but I still would rather find the Type 93 because it lets me do that. Get 2 3-1s in the front line, take out the Greyhound, don't let it get a value trade into this cavalry, and don't force me to go for the line of play key and pray he doesn't have half-track. Now we see he doesn't have half-track, but playing key on 4 into front line as your only move, and only unit on board, doesn't feel great. No one goes for the Sherman. This is correct, no matter how bad it feels. And here, I give no one a taste of his own medicine. He did a similar thing in last game of pinning my key. Here, I'm going to play my own key and then pin his Sherman. Here, I mean, your best bet is just playing out 30 seconds and passing. No, you're actually literally dead if you do that, so you have to weaken do it, but if you weaken do it, you're also literally dead. You're just dead on board. And yeah, that is just the turn 5 win. And that means, shows the strength of Jaguar. And that means we are going to game 5. It is going to be the frontline mirror. And let's get to the mulligans. So, immediately, we see I am starting second for the first time. And after all of those complaints about going first, this is the one matchup where going first is ludicrously important. However, it's not everything. You can definitely throw a game going first in the frontline mirror. You can also definitely just not have a great hand. If you don't hit Red Devils going first, and the opponent does hit Red Devils going second, you're still likely going to be in a massively disfavored position, even though you went first. So here, no one should keep the Greyhound. He should keep the Combat Engineers. 22nd, I don't think is that important. There's the argument of turn 1 Combat Engineers, turn 2 Push-Up Greyhound, turn 3 22nd Trade, something like that. However, kind of gets punished by the same thing. I went Patrol, so it's slightly different than getting punished by Dive Bombing. I don't dislike keeping 22nd here, but I just really dislike 22nd in this deck, because if no one's going second, this card is absolutely useless. It's like a substantially worse 32nd. On my side of the board, keeping 5th Rangers, keeping 32nd, send back the other 3. It doesn't feel great, but normally I would like to keep a 3rd card if possible. None of these options are keepable going second. No one does keep the Greyhound Combat Engineers 22nd. I get back a pretty good hand, Combat Engineers, Red Devils. This is the type of hand that the opponent can throw against. No one starts with Combat Engineers. This is absolutely correct. I start with 32nd, absolutely correct. And now no one's going to move up the Greyhound, unless he gets a Red Devils, in which case he's going to move up the Red Devils. But he doesn't, so move up Greyhound. And then I'm likely just going to double 32nd. The fact that no one is even considering 35T here is actually hilarious to me. I didn't notice this in-game, obviously. But playing 35T here would just be essentially a game-losing play. Absolutely no reason to do that. Instead, he's going to push the Greyhound. I find my own Greyhound. This is still just a double 32nd turn, because if this gets buffed by 99th, I can double or triple trade into it, which does not feel great, but it beats nothing. And this is going to somewhat prevent him flooding the front line with more units. Dive Bombing Draw is not useful on this turn, because you're just going to be doing 22nd go face. I guess you could do 22nd Dive Bomb in one of the 30 seconds. There's no reason to do that, though. Just do Dive Bomb and go face. And here, if you look at my reaction in the bottom of my screen, or sorry, the bottom left of the screen, my reaction is because in the game, no one is hovering over the Greyhound to attack into one of the 30 seconds, which would be a hilariously game-losing mistake. Now, he ends up just going Greyhound face, which is absolutely correct. However, that's the second time, and it's turn 3, that no one was, literally just a mouse click away, just let go of the mouse away from throwing a completely one position. So that shows how easy it is to make mistakes in this mirror, but it also shows how good of a player no one is. He is not making these mistakes. And also he is getting the absolute god draws. With a second 35T, this is gonna let his turn 4 be double 35T, kill Greyhound, go face, draw another with the 22nd. So here, I can get Combat Engineers to the front line. Sorry, not Combat. I can get a Red Devils to the front line. I could also get a 32nd to the front line. That just seems substantially worse. Red Devils push up, gets punished really hard by 5th Rangers, but beats nothing. However, no one does have the dive bomb in the 35T. He can take out the Red Devils. That will be all 5 of his credits, but then he gets to move up the 0-op 35T to the front line, make it a 3-2, draw another card from the 22nd. And it's funny how much I've talked already in this video about how much I dislike 22nd in this deck, and yet it appears that 22nd seems to be the card that is carrying no one, because by this point he played it on turn 3, drew a card on turn 4, and now it's about to draw another card again on turn 5. It seems to be the thing that is propelling him. He would have 2 less cards in his hand right now. He wouldn't have these 2 other 35Ts in his hand without the 22nd. However, all of this is because he is going first and also hit the Combat Engineers with the Greyhound. Like, it is just an incredibly win more card in this deck. If I had a 22nd in my hand because I was running it in the deck, it would be probably the worst card in my hand. So, that is sort of the reality of it. Here, I think the best play is Patrol the 22nd. That needs to die. Half-track the Combat Engineers. There's an argument for doing that in the other way, but because 22nd is more expensive, rather than trying to take out my opponent's higher value card, I should just play for tempo, make my opponent have to spend more credits replaying the card. Here, no one has a few choices. He could 99th the 35T and play play Skytrain. Sorry. He could even do that and use dive bombing to trade. He could do that and not use dive bombing but still trade. He is going to do 99th, go face, and whatever you do, do not play a 1-drop in this situation because of Stars and Stripes. Just don't play a 1-drop. Don't play a 1-drop. And if you're going to play a 1-drop, especially don't play Combat Engineers. But he's going to play Combat Engineers. There is no Stars and Stripes punish. Even if it was, it wouldn't be the end of the world because he'd be 2 off lethal. With any blitz draw. However, that would be unnecessarily throwing the game, because you would then not be able to draw with Sherman. You lose 4 units, suddenly you're behind on cards, and with like 1 good turn from me following a Stars and Stripes there, you've completely lost the game again. So, again, this is showing that after almost making 2 different game-losing mistakes, no one makes an actual game-losing mistake, but then there's just no punish for it. So it does show just the margins in this frontline mirror. And I'm not even trying to say that no one is like, oh, no one's so bad, he's making all these mistakes. This is a hard matchup. This is one of the hardest matchups in the meta right now. Because there is so many pitfalls. It is so easy to lose in the mirror even after having a dominant start. There's so many cards you have to play around, combinations of cards you have to play around. Unfortunately, by this point, there is not any more of these combinations to play around, because I don't have the credits to do Retreat, Stars and Stripes, and now no one's going to be able to push up the Sherman. You can also just play We Can Do It if he wants to. More likely he's just going to play Strap Bomb because it limits the credits, takes out all of my units. You could see I'm clapping. I know this game is over. No one knows this game is over. Double push the infantries. And I can technically stay alive with 5th Rangers into the 463rd and just play out some more 30-seconds. We'll play out 1 30-second. But that's the best I got. Because, yeah, the hand does nothing. And yeah, remember like that spot 2 turns ago where if I have a Stars and Stripes, I have like a 7-card hand, and if I have a Stars and Stripes, I clear the board and suddenly no one can't draw and could potentially lose. That was 2 turns ago. Now no one has a 7-card hand to my 3-card hand, plus still maintains board advantage. And that is going to be no one taking it in game 5, knocking me out of the OCC Ultimate in 5th place, out in the quarterfinals. Very unfortunate, but other than those mistakes in game 1. I think I played pretty well, and wouldn't have won without those mistakes. Just, I mean, I got lucky in some games, no one got lucky in more games, and that's just the way it is. But that is it for this top half of the bracket. Now we get down to the bottom half of the bracket of Jinlun and Leo versus Berto and Wu Moi. So, I'm going to start off with Jinlun versus Leo. Let's see if we can see the player cards. Here they are. Jinlun, it's funny to say 12,000 games is newer to the game, but relatively newer to the game. Leo, less than 10,000. He's a beast, though. Leo has shown up to 2 OCCs, and he won both of them. And also he played in Worlds, and I think he got, like, the 17th in Worlds or something like that. Like, he placed relatively high in Worlds as well. This guy is a beast. However, it doesn't really matter what your past accomplishments are. It matters how you play on the day and what decks you bring. So, Jinlun is bringing frontline with double dive bombing and 1 patrol. So he's kind of taken best of both worlds, still leaning towards the dive bombings. I'm not a fan of triple orders in general. I'm happy that he doesn't run 20 seconds, though. Then he has frontline. Oh, sorry, not frontline. He has Jagro, which, looking at it, it's my list, but with Panzer H swapped out for Martyr. It's 2-order feigned. Then he has Soviet France with double Scorched Earth, double Spy Ring. He's also running Tractor Factories. I think this is a little heavy for my liking. He has the Liberation in there, too. I think this is a little too heavy, but I've definitely seen a lot worse. And this is definitely going to be able to get you wins. And then he has Britain-German discard. With only 3 supply shortage, no erratos, no sudden strikes. This is a very, very heavy version of this deck. He's not running his Majesty's Chosen, which I'm happy about. I've seen a lot of people run that card, which I think is a huge mistake. But he is running Mosquito and Lancaster. A very heavy version of this deck. I strongly disagree. If you can't tell already, I strongly disagree with how a lot of these players build Britain-German discard. I think they make the decks unnecessarily heavy. And then, on the other side of the board, we have essentially the exact same lineup from Leo, which is going to be US-German frontline. Leo going with the 1 dive bombing, 1 patrol, split, no 20 seconds. Then he has Feigned Retreat Jagro. He is running 2-order feigned. And then we have Britain-German discard. These are the only 2 discard players in the tournament. They got each other in the first round. And he is similarly running a very heavy version of the deck. It actually might be... It's not the same version... No, it actually might be the same version of the deck. He also has Lancaster, Mosquito, double RAF. This might be the exact same version of the deck. They might have prepared together, actually, seeing as they have the exact same lineup, and nearly card for card. And last but not least, he has Soviet France. This one with double Phony War, no Liberation, double Scorched Earth, though. No Tractor Factories. I like this version of the deck a lot more. I think double Phony War, little odd. I mean, I brought double Phony War to the last tournament myself. It's a call out for discard. But, yeah, I prefer Leo's version of the deck overall. However, because it's less heavy, it means it's going to be less good into specifically Jinlun's Soviet France matchup. So hopefully you can avoid both of those. Hopefully you can avoid the mirror matchup if you're Leo. And now the question comes to bans. Here, you're never banning Jagro. Well, is that true? Actually, maybe you do just ban Jagro. Because frontline, Soviet France is really good into frontline. I think if you're Jinlun, you probably ban Leo's Soviet France because it's going to be good into frontline and it's going to be good into discard. I mean, it's not going to be great into discard, but it's going to be playable into discard. And if you're Leo, looking across the table, I'd probably just ban discard. I mean, you don't need to ban discard. You can essentially ban anything. It is actually really weird. This is a matchup where I wouldn't hate almost any ban. I think banning US frontline actually would be really weird for either of them. But any of the other 3 decks I would not hate. And we see Leo bans Jinlun's Soviet France, and Jinlun bans Leo's Discard. So, that is going to be interesting. Leo does not want the Soviet France into Soviet France matchup. I think that's fair. Jinlun is scared of that discard deck. And yeah, that is the bans out of the way. And let's jump into game 1. It is going to be the frontline mirror. Jinlun starting first. He should absolutely be keeping 5th Rangers in this opening hand. And looking across the board at Leo, I would keep 5th Rangers going second. And yeah, you can't keep keeping Skytrain going second if you have a 1-drop, I think is fine, because yes, even if they kill Skytrain immediately on curve, it still bought you time, where they're spending their credits killing Skytrain rather than developing the board further. But absolutely both of these players should be keeping 5th Rangers. Jinlun finds 30-second Skytrain, which is absolutely insane, considering what he mulliganed. And Leo finds a 1-drop, but not a whole lot else. Triple half-track is not what you want to see in this matchup. And here, just Greyhound push-up from Jinlun. That's exactly what he does. I would just play a Whirlwind as Leo. You're a little worried about 99th. However, like, you could Greyhound attack it, so with 99th it's a 3-4. I don't really like that a whole lot. I think you just kind of lose versus a 99th. So instead play Whirlwind. Jinlun plays Skytrain. Pretty understandable. Here you can double trade, and I don't think you can afford to take the front line, because since you're just going to be spending credits. So yeah, I like getting the combat engineers down and trading with the the Red Devils, and that's exactly what Leo's going to do. Very good play by Leo so far. Other than not keeping 5th Rangers in the front line, I think Leo has been pretty sharp. Here, Jinlun has a few different plays. I'm kind of a fan of getting up the Red Devils and pushing both infantries. He's instead going to push the 5th Rangers, which means he gets punished by the half-track. And now Leo can get a 2-2 Red Devils to the front line, which against this board is going to be very, very powerful. And now Jinlun's spot is looking a little worse. He can easily trade this 32nd into it. Trades the other one into it. That's just objectively a mistake. He could have a 2-2 instead of a 2-1 in the front line. And he hits the Jasko, not what he wants. So Jinlun making several mistakes already. Despite going first with a strong opening hand. And here, this is, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily play a 5th Rangers in this spot just because of Stars and Stripes strategic bombing. But this is sort of the positions why keeping 5th Rangers in your opening hand is so important. So many comebacks from going second in the frontline mirror start with 5th Rangers, because it's such a powerful card. Your opponent doesn't have any easy answers to it. And it can easily give you a 2-for-1, even a 3-for-1. Even if it's only going a 1-for-1, it can get you tempo. And in this position, I do not really like Hellcat. I guess your options are kind of limited. I think you just kind of lose to a board clear anyway, so going Hellcat into Red Devils is your best option. You're baiting your opponent into trading. Because the other option was just fully trade out the front line with your front line, or your support line, and not play anything. Here, Jinlun is just going to push everything up. And rolls a second Jasko. That is deeply unfortunate. And Leo, with a second half-track, is going to send his 5th Rangers back. He can trade out and take the front line. You probably want the damage. Yeah, you want the damage on the Whirlwind. Well, yeah, you want the damage on the Whirlwind. Skytrain is the only air unit in your opponent's deck. So you're not really worried about keeping the Skytrain as high target. There's an argument for putting the damage on the half-track, because that way half-track is the more valuable target. So if your opponent's going to hit one of these with the 5th Rangers. However, if your opponent's going to be hitting one of these with the 5th Rangers, it's probably going to be the half-track anyways. So, actually, no, I actually do quite like this from Leo. And Jinlun, I mean, it's very easy to look at the double Jaskos and say, oh, he lost this game because of double Jasko. But he's also losing this game because he's made several mistakes. I think he would be winning this position even with a double Jasko, had he played slightly differently. Leo decided to cash out with the Sherman now. I'm not sure if I really like this. Here, I would just kill the Skytrain. You don't have Stars and Stripes in hand. You don't have Blitzkrieg in hand. You're not finishing out this game quickly. Your opponent's going to be getting more units onto board anyways. You're not board locking them. Just kill the Skytrain. I think we're pushing up Combat Engineers is a very, very risky line, because you're essentially saying if my opponent has a 35T plus, like, any Blitz unit in the game, I'd lose. Greyhound push-up is better than Combat push-up. I still would have liked to see you just killing the Skytrain. Here, 35T is going to come out, trade out the Wirbelwind, and then you can just slam a Sherman in this position. Oh, actually, sorry, I didn't realize he had the credits to do this. This is absolutely correct by Jinlun. This way you get 2 units onto the board, you get rid of one of these Jaskos, which is doing absolutely nothing. Leo picks up a Blitzkrieg, which is not going to be lethal now. Your opponent's at full health with a Jasko, but that is going to be interesting burst damage for later in this game. Starts by pushing up Combat Engineers. Very bizarre. So he's clearly trying to set up a we can do it play here. Again, he's really trying to milk this stuck in the support line with the Skytrain thing. The we can do it is going to help that a great deal. However, your opponent can always just sack Skytrain into Sherman. And also just trade off all of these guys currently on board. Hellcat comes out, takes out the half-track. He actually has a second Hellcat he can use to take out the Combat Engineers. Is that a half-track in hand? Yeah, okay, he decides to just use both Hellcats. Take them out. I like this. Leo has all 4 Shermans. He has his own Skytrain, he has 99th. He can... It is difficult to imagine finding a way to throw this game. There's no reason to spend credits pushing up your 4-7 Sherman, since it will be traded by this Hellcat if you don't find like a dive bombing. Starts with Sherman, looking for those dive bombing, or that dive bombing, maybe that patrol. Doesn't find it. Also, I'm sure he would have been happy with the 35T. And at this point, I think you're just 99th? Because you also want to be playing around half-track, you want to be playing around Stars and Stripes. This is what I mean by it is very, very difficult to play these types of matchups. You can't really play Skytrain at this point. I think you just push up... No, because then 5th Rangers, you're letting your opponent take the front line. Yeah. I mean, this is weak to half-track. This is potentially weak to... I think you just trade out the... Well, no, because you can't really trade out the Skytrain at this point. Because... No, surely you could trade out the Skytrain. Overdraw on the Hellcat. Jinlun's just saying if you have Stars and Stripes, you have Stars and Stripes, but at least I got my card drawing. Picks up a 5th Rangers. And this is looking more and more like it's possible for Jinlun to come back. The double Blitzkrieg in hand, though, means that if Leo sticks any units in the front line at any point ever, it is likely just going to be Hellfire raining down on Jinlun. "30-second draw. We can do it 5th Rangers. Not going to be helping setting up a lethal on the following turn. He's just going to throw everything onto the board. Jinlun can take the front line again. And what is the best way? You can just push up Greyhound Sherman. Probably your best line. Finds Strap Bombing, finds Combat Engineers. Gets another unit off of Skytrain. And this so it's 3, 7. No, there's no 8, 12, 18. That would actually be lethal without Jasko. With Jasko, that's 2 off lethal for Leo that turn. I'm not sure if he did the math or not. He might have just not seen it. But either way, it's not lethal. But he is kind of going all out, because if these units can be cleared, he is in a potentially game-losing situation. However, it's very difficult for your opponent to clear this with the Skytrain, with the Jasko. Jinlun's going to be able to take out 2 of these, but then he is immediately going to eat a 3-unit double Blitzkrieg and lose. Chooses to go for the Strap Bombing. Doesn't really change anything. This is just going to be a push-up double Blitzkrieg game. He can even push up the Greyhound if he wants. And surely Leo sees this. He does. Double checking the math, and he takes game 1. Very solid play from Leo. A lot of questionable plays by Jinlun, and that is going to be the frontline mirror going in Leo's favor. And not that surprised. Between these two players, I would favor Leo to win this. I just think he's the stronger player. He has the better track record. Game 2 is going to be Feigned Retreat into Soviet France. These are just repeats of all of the matchups that Noah and I had. And here you see Leo looking at that, keeping that KV. He's remembering that Noah game. He's played that matchup before, I'm sure, on both sides. And finds the KV anyways. However, does not find Bryansk, does not find Scorch, does not find Winter Warfare. And on the other side of things, Jinlun does find the turn 1... Oh, sorry, it's not a turn 1, it's because he has double errata, which means he's guaranteed Feigned. Turn 2 Yokosuka pull Befehlswagen. Leo's going to Spy Ring. And actually, Spy Ring into turn 3 Depth Charges is potentially really, really strong. Jinlun finds the Signal Regiment. Winter Warfare, not a card for being played this turn, but it's going to be a decent card in this matchup. And Leo goes straight for the Depth Charges. I like this. Anything else would be kind of trolling. And Jinlun is just going to be laying on the damage if there wasn't this HQ smokescreen. However, there is, which means Leo has bought himself a turn. However, still a very awkward position. I think you want to hammer Winter Warfare to set up the Naval Brigade on the following turn. Instead, Leo is just going to steal the Signal Regiment. I don't hate this. Keep the hammer in hand. Really good for Sendai's. Unfortunately for him, he plays the 39th on the right side of the HQ. As in the correct side of the HQ. He played it on the left. However, he has no control over where the Signal Regiment goes, and the Signal Regiment always goes to the right, unfortunately for him. Here he can actually just fully clear the board, Winter Warfare, trade, hammer. Alternatively, he could Winter Warfare trade Petliakov. Uses defend in depth instead of the hammer. I don't know how I feel about this. So you're playing it because you're saying he might go down to 0 cards in hand later in the game. However, he also might just like play like a Shiden or something with cards in hand later in the game because of like feigned retreat or surprise attacks or whatever it may be. I don't necessarily hate it. I think going for the Petliakov actually would have been the stronger play though, because you've seen these 2 cards. I'm going to quickly skip back to the mulligan because I forget Jinlun's mulligan. Will we be able to catch it? Okay, so you know there's 1 card that they kept in hand. So, okay, fair enough play from Leo. Because that 1 card could easily just be... Ooh, skipping way too far ahead. Because that 1 card could easily be a feigned retreat. You're not necessarily thinking double errata. I think there's a good chance that there's an errata, though, so that's why I would lean towards, on this turn, getting out the Petliakov. You leave your opponent with 1 unit on board. However, you get out the Petliakov, that's going to stop Sendais, that's going to stop raiding brigades, Rados, 35T op cost reductions. There's a decent number of units that's going to stop. Some of them are more useful than others. However, I know it's very hard to say no to a fully cleared board in this position, but if your opponent gets feigned in hand, I mean, I guess the idea is you don't care if they get feigned because you have KV. Here, Jinlun's just going to move up Whirlwind Face, get the damage in. I think I probably would have preferred Aichi or Desperate Measures on that turn, because this Whirlwind's significantly less useful. And here, Leo can trade it out. Probably just trade it out Petliakov Bryansk. Is the correct line here. Petliakov and Bryansk on the left sides of the HQ. Not that it matters, because Petliakov is going to be stopping Shiden. Plays Bryansk on the right side, and Petliakov on the right. So that's very interesting to me. I don't know if this is him saying, well, I have Petliakov, so you can't Sendai, so it doesn't matter where he plays it, or if it was an accident of him playing around that on the previous turn. Not exactly sure, but either way, this is kind of why I liked Aichi for Jinlun on the previous turn. So he's going to Aichi Desperate Measures. I would have rather just see the Feigned come out that turn. This play seems kind of odd to me. And if you're Leo, this... I guess... Okay, sorry. I guess the idea is you're just going to win with Aichi. You're just going to pray your opponent has no response to Aichi. And, oh, I'd like to... I know it's a very close call, and I'm not saying that it's even necessarily wrong for Leo to have played Defend in Depth over the Hammer. However, I would just like to point out that on this turn, you would really like a Defend in Depth in your hand over that Hammer. I'm going to double check actually how many Aichi's Jinlun runs, because I only run 1, and I think his deck is very similar to mine. Yeah, it is the 1 copy of Aichi. That is unfortunate for Leo. Here, Jinlun is just going to try to milk this Aichi for all it's worth, not play Feigned, because he doesn't need to. And here, Leo does not find his healing. If he had the Defend in Depth instead of this Hammer, he'd be able to win. Instead, his only out is Red Banner for a fighter. There's some 3-cost fighters in Japan if you play it on the Signal Regiment. However, if you do that, it won't be guarded. There is some... there's a 4-cost fighter in Soviets. There might be 2, I forget how much one of the Yaks is costed. There is no French fighters you can get. There's some 5-cost ones if you do it on the Petliakov. I mean, I feel like you might want to be keeping Petliakov though, because you're also just worried about your opponent killing you the regular way with the Sendai. I think his best option was probably the Japan 3. Unfortunately, he does not get a fighter, and with that, Leo's just going to immediately surrender, and Jinlun takes game number 2. Yeah, that's unfortunate series of events for Leo, being punished by that single Aichi. Good call by, well, okay, good call because it worked out. I actually dislike the fact that Jinlun went for this Aichi play rather than just playing Feigned on curve. It won him the game, because if he had played Feigned on curve, he would have lost to the KV, and his opponent had no healing and no way of answering Aichi, so he lost. However, if he had gone for the Aichi play, and Jinlun had any amount of healing, his deck certainly runs a decent chunk. He has 3 Call to the Colonies he could have drawn that would have turned that game on its head and probably won him the game. He could have had the second Defend in Depth to answer it. He could have Heroes into 39th to answer it. Now, all of these are not guaranteed to be in his hand, like one of these to be in his hand, so it's not like Aichi is like a guaranteed punish and he hit like the 1%, but it's a very high chance it is punished, versus just playing Feigned on curve, which is punished by a single card. Now, ironically, the single card was in his hand, and it would have punished him. However, yeah, I feel like he went for the play that won him the game less often, and it won him the game. So it's still correct to criticize that, just because he won the game and would have lost the game if he had gone for the other play. If there had been something like a Heroes of the Soviet Union, so he has a read, there's a Soviet card in his hand, and Leo picks it quick and doesn't play it, you're thinking, okay, it's not Engineer. He picks it quick, so it's something useful, but it's not Engineer, so he would have played it, so it's probably KV, and he's waiting for the Feigned. I'm not going to play Feigned. If he also read, then that's a very high-level play. But if he just goes for the Aichi because he sees, oh, my opponent's low on health, I'm going to play a Bomber and attack him in the face with a Bomber, that is a terrible play. But it works out for him, so that is going to be a 1-1 tournament, and we go into Game 3. It is going to be Leo's Soviet France versus Jinlun's Discard. Now, these are the decks that they banned off of each other. Jinlun banning Leo's Discard, Leo banning Jinlun's Soviet France. I think this matchup, because of how heavy Jinlun builds the deck, I think this matchup's favored for Jinlun. However, it's certainly not impossible for Leo to win. Leo keeps Spying, mulligans the other 3. I like this. All you really need in this matchup is Spying and draw, and pray your Spying isn't discarded. On the other side of the board, Jinlun finds, I think that's his only honey, and Convoy. This is going to get him a strong early start. And Leo, just going to play Spying, see what you get. You're really hoping for US research. German research is also acceptable. British research is easily the worst one. And here, Jinlun just goes face. I strongly disagree with this play. I have no idea why you don't play Convoy here. Zero clue. Like, this is not a burn matchup. You have Lancaster is your only burst card. Your opponent has a ton of guards. I don't... Like, there's the argument that next turn you can Convoy and hit face with Honey again if your opponent doesn't have a guard. I don't know. It seems a little bizarre to me. Like, had he done this the other way, Leo would be at 2 more health. However, Jinlun could have played C4 that turn had he chose. He could have played MI5 that turn if he chose. Leo plays first rifles. I expect we're going to see a RAF come out from Jinlun. That's exactly what we see. Leo finds double Scorched Earth, triple Bryansk. Not what you want to see in this matchup. The Parade is a good pickup, but he also lost the Spy Ring roll, so that's deeply unfortunate for him. And looks like a decent Scorch turn, but that means you're not going to have the credits for First Rifles again. However, if you play First Rifles and your opponent has a second RAF, suddenly you're looking really, really bad. I don't hate Scorched Earth second Bryansk. He's going to go for Upgrade Research Scorched Earth. Here, Jinlun could just case yellow, buff up these units. He could Wolf Pack. He's just going to hit Bryansk Pass. I don't mind this play, because he's setting up case yellow unit on the following turn. And with this Avery in hand, your opponent just upgrading Research. You know there's actually a decent chance of overdrawing your opponent, despite being a discard deck. So not playing the Wolfpack or the MI5 that turn, I think is fine. I also just see the argument for playing Chaos Yellow buff your units. And Leo here is just going to pray that there is no Avery, and of course we see Avery is just going to come down on curve. On 7, it's going to destroy the Bryansk, overdraw ISU, deeply unfortunate for Leo. And on the follow-up, I mean, you just have to replay them. You could Scorched this Avery if you want. That seems very low impact. I think you just First Rifles Bryansk again. And if the Bryansk sticks and they move up, kill the First Rifles, you can just do Synthetic Rubber on Bryansk, kill the Avery, and you have a decent threat for your opponent to deal with. But if we're looking at Jinlun's hand, this is exactly what Jinlun wants. It is a healthy amount of discard, and then just every single tempo large unit in his deck. Like, if he can find a Lancaster by turn 10, you essentially couldn't ask for a better hand from Jinlun. Leo here, I like the Bryansk First Rifles. Maybe Bryansk Rima, just because the Rima actually survives. And it plays on curve slightly better. From Jinlun here, I think you move up, yeah, hit, and he's just going to slam C4. He has seen the ISU god, and that's really the only board clear Leo has. Leo does have Winter Offensive, but that's not going to be as strong into this board. He finds the heroes. You could get a second ISU off the heroes, but then he would also need a Winter Warfare, so that's a couple different things that would need to go right for him. He finds the second ISU, though. He picks that instantly. Could be very tempting there to just go for a Cossacks. Your opponent has the front line, you're under pressure to get the Blitz unit, but he knows exactly what he's doing. Take the ISU. And, I mean, you know that your opponent doesn't run His Majesty's Chosen. You've seen the Avery. You don't have to be worried about mass retreat. You do, now that the Jinlun is up to 9 credits, you do have to be worried about Monsoon Rot supply shortage as a board wipe, but that will be a board wipe that will still prevent damage face. The Black Watch comes out, meaning that, looking at Leo's hand, there's so many orders in Leo's hand. Now, Leo could just play ISU. You can't go for the Synthetic Rubber because the 0-cost Synthetic Rubber will cost 2 because of the Black Watch. So even though you have the 8 credits to play Tier 2 Research and the 1 credit to attack with the Bryansk, you do not have the credits to play the 0-cost order. You can just sack the T60 into the C4th, replay it, play the T34 and kill the C4th to get rid of the C4th. That leaves you with no guards, and suddenly you're staring down 8 damage. Alternatively, you can just do another T60 and Rima, and pray there is no Monsoon Rot. I think that's probably your best line, is just sticking a ton of units onto the board. I think maybe he forgot that he can't upgrade the research because of Blackwatch. Spiring, I think also the clock got to him. If we go back and look at what his clock is, yeah, he had 2 seconds, 1 second by the end of his turn. I think it might have actually just been roped out there. Yeah, the panic sets in for Leo, and also he hits another British research. That is incredibly unfortunate for him. And here comes the discard. First discard hits the ISU. That is... Yep, this game is essentially over. And he finds the Lancaster off the MI5. This game is 100% over. The Parade hits the guaranteed Rima. Or actually, no, sorry, it's not a guaranteed Rima because the order went on top of deck, I believe. Off the MI5. Oh, is Parade not the top card of your deck? Because the top card of his deck right now is a T60. Is Parade just draw a random unit? It is a random unit. Okay, that's interesting. So he pulls a Rima from the deck. Again, really should have played Rima last turn. Also, you missed clearing the board. So if you don't play Parade on this turn, you can sack T60 into C4th, play the T34, kill C4th, and then you can trade the 0-1 Bryansk into the Avery. So you're left with a guarded 5-1 tank and a 0-6 Bryansk, and you've cleared your opponent's front line. That seems like a much better position than the one you are currently in now. So he's going to add radar to hand. And here, Jinlun can literally just go Lancaster face. He's going to case yellow into the other Bryansk. He picks up Monty. Just going to play a fort, because why not? Push up the Blackwatch. Here, Leo finds a defend in depth that's going to let him take out this Blackwatch, finally get these orders down to a reasonable cost. However, he's not left with a ton of credits left, just going to play the T60. I like this. However, again, this, you're in a very rough position. Now Jinlun is just going to go for Lancaster face. And Monty, draw last. Just for a little extra BM on that. I mean, yeah, you can draw cards. I don't know what you're drawing for. I guess it's your second defend in depth. Picks up the Winter Warfare, but again, ISU was discarded like 1 in 8, I think. And he might just upgrade research, because he gets the active sonar in hand. He can pin this Lancaster for a turn. He can brick Jinlun's hand. And Jinlun's deck has a lot of high-cost cards, so if you can get your opponent down to only being allowed to play 1 card a turn, things are looking very good for you. However, I believe Jinlun also has Ultra, so there's a chance that he just holds up Ultra this turn, and I mean, I guess you can Winter Warfare first. Discard comes out. Discards a Rima. Defend in depth allows him to take out the Lancaster. He is just going to sonar first. This is giving your opponent an opportunity to discard this defend in depth, but at this point you do need to take risks as Leo. I think I would have liked to see him hold on to that active sonar, because there's also like potentially a world where you can maybe go for Bletchley and hope your opponent doesn't have a Lend-Lease in hand. We see he's just going to go for the 4-cost Wolfpack, discards another Rima, holds up Ultra. And now Leo has to play around Ultra. So you're going to start with the Winter Warfare. Well, can you play around it? Because if Ultra had to be the top deck, because Jinlun does not have the credits. If Ultra had been in hand, Jinlun does not have the credits. So at this point, you are not saying, well, what are the odds my opponent has Ultra in hand? It is, what are the odds my opponent top decked Ultra that turn? And it's probably around a 1 in 25-ish. So it's like, can you play around a 1 in 25 if you're in this much of a losing position as Leo? I don't think so. Like, if this Winter Warfare did nothing, I think you could play it, because this Winter Warfare is not a highly impactful card. However, this Winter Warfare, if you play it and it's not Ultra, it will take out your only guard on the board at the moment. It's going to go for his Scorched Earth. So this is going to proc the Ultra. He actually does play around it, which is kind of insane, given his position. And I mean, you can take out the Lancaster. However, you were so close to being able to actually trade kill the Seaforth, trade the Bryansk into the Avery. I think he really missed that opportunity where he could take out this Seaforth and this Avery, like, what was it, like 6 or 7 turns ago. I think that was a huge missed opportunity. And he goes for this now. This means Lancaster is going to proc again, and also if your opponent just like moves up, if your opponent discards, if your opponent moves up, Wrath if your opponent has another guard, and we see that it is going to be another guard. He has Naval Brigade in the deck he can draw, and that is it. I think that's essentially... No, a Winter Offensive would have kept him alive. So he is going to clear that. And yeah, Jinlun probably just going to get out the Sexton. Sexton Case. No, he can't even... Sexton Upgrade Research, I think, is the way to go. Nope, he's going to draw last. Jinlun, you gotta stop doing this, man. Here, I think you just have to play... Do you have to play both tanks? Maybe the play was playing both tanks. No, I guess because your opponent... If your opponent doesn't take out Mobilize off this... off this tank, if your opponent just goes face, you can hit the tank, but again, any discard messes this play up, any damage messes this play up. I mean, those are the types of plays Leo has to be going for. Chaika draw is not what you want to see. And, I mean, Jinlun, this is the one matchup where all of these heavy units are going to help, and very fortunately for him, he's going to get that matchup and take a 2-1 series lead. However, he now has Frontline into Jagro and Soviet France. And those are both matchups that are slightly favored against Frontline. Now, he does have 2 chances for it, but he also showed very, very weak play on Frontline, I think, in Game 2. Or Game 1, was it? So, we'll see if he can get a win on this deck. It looks like we might miss the mulligans here. Yep. We come in, and Leo's already had... Oh, Leo's had a decent start, but it's a decent start into a turn 1 Red Devils going first. So, you already have that going for Jinlun. Pushes up the Greyhound 32nd, and Leo is desperate for a Desperate right now. Type 93 would also be very good there. I mean, you just do 35T, double trade the 35Ts into the Red Devils. Okay, Signal, double hit into Greyhound, and then I guess you trade out into the 32nd and play a Type 94. I'm not a fan of this play specifically because we can do it, making a large Red Devils. I would have just rather see the Red Devils killed last turn. If Arado can find Desperate, though, suddenly everything is looking very, well, not good, but a lot less bad, at the very least. And Arado does find Desperate, so that means Leo is going to be able to clear the front line, play a Type 94. He's still not able to get out this Befehlswagen. And Jinlun's probably just going to push up Sherman. Like, push up and play Sherman. If he has any 30 seconds left in the deck, which I believe he might, he should 30 second first. And he does, and he actually gets punished for it. I'm so happy to see somebody getting punished for that misplay. If in that situation where you're going to have 1 credit left, what card in your deck are you going to be playing other than 30 second? The answer is none. You're going to be playing 30 second. So you should play your 30 second so you avoid like the 1 in 30 chance or whatever it is to, I guess it's 2 in 30 chance to not get a draw. And here, Leo takes the front line with quite a few units. He has Signal, he's getting a bit of damage in. However, he does not have Feigned, and he does not have a Ratto to find Feigned. He does have this key, however, this key is going to be instantly met by the half-track the first time it comes out. Jinlun can actually clear the front line. It's a very good choice that Leo went for the pin on the Sherman. Because if he had not done that, then Jinlun would be able to clear the front line and play 99th to buff. Now he is going to have to trade out. And he finds the Feigned and plays it essentially immediately. He's like playing it as he draws it. And this is a very burst-heavy hand from Jinlun, though. So if Jinlun is able to find... Oh, sorry, if Leo is not able to find the right cards, if he hits even 1 brick, like if he draws a Shiden, this game is over, essentially. And I think you just go in for the damage. Like, I think you just hit your opponent for 10. Which sort of raises the question of why you didn't. He does that. That is... I think that is very wrong by Jinlun, but doesn't look like it's going to matter, because Leo finds Shiden into Aichi, and this game is over. What a brutal way to go out. I mean, he gets the lucky Feigned top deck, but immediately gets like the worst cards in his deck post-Feigned, and seeing the misplay from your opponent too. Jinlun, despite all efforts to the contrary, wins this set 3-1 over Leo. And Leo's OCC dominance does come to an end. He is only human, and I mean, he didn't get particularly lucky in this set, but I mean, you don't win you don't win both of the only 2 OCCs you play in without getting at least a little lucky. So it was bound to happen eventually. And now we get on to the last quarterfinals. It's going to be Berto Burrito versus Uwu Moi. Here is Berto's stats page. You can pause it if you're interested. Here was Uwu Moi's stat page. You can see there's a 10% difference in their win rate around the same matches played. Now we take a look at decks. Berto Burrito on Soviet Japan self-damage. Now this is a... we saw Tiger on self-damage. He was running Soviet Italy self-damage. This is the more traditional version of the deck. This is probably Berto's favorite deck in the meta right now. It's a very good counter to Jagro and Frontline. Speaking of Frontline, that's his second deck. He's got the Frontline. He's got the 1 dive bombing 2 patrol. I think we saw 2 dive bombing 1 patrol from somebody else. I'm not a fan of the triple orders. I think it's too many orders. You really want a lot of units. Does not run the 20 seconds. Over onto his Brit Japan Air. Looks very similar to my list. He has got the double Sonya, double Aichi, single naval supply run. He's got triple air superiority. Looks like he's running triple air superiority, no Kitty Hawk is the only difference from my list. And then over on Jagro, this is where Berto does things slightly differently. He is still on the triple order Feigned. He is running Bombing Raid in his Feigned deck, which I strongly disagree with. And then we take a look at Uwu Moi's decks, and it is exactly the same. It is US-German frontline, 1 dive bombing, 2 patrol, actually same as Berto. Then he has Soviet Japan frontline, or sorry, Soviet Japan self-damage. Um, then he has Brit Air. He's got the triple air superiority. He has cut Sonya's, though. And then over on the Jagro, he is running 2 Order Feigned, which I think is the way to go. So a couple card differences, but deck lineup-wise, it is exactly the same, and I think they should just both ban their air decks. The self-damage is going to be quite good into the Jagro in the front line, but I think you just accept that you're both going to have that strong matchup, because air is also good into self-damage. And, I mean, I guess you could argue that maybe you should ban Soviets under the assumption that your opponent bans your air. But, yeah, it is what it is. You gotta take some risks on bans, and, like, sometimes there is just objective mistakes on bans, like I think we saw from Head in the first round. In this case, they both banned Britain. I think that's perfectly fine. And we get into game 1. It is going to be the self-damage mirror. Now, self-damage is a deck that I have not played in a very long time, but I really loved it. I was pretty good at it, so we'll see how good I am at analyzing the gameplay of it, because it has been a while. On Berto Burrito's side, he has Engineers 456th, SU 34th Kards. I would definitely send back the Engineers, and I think I would send back the 456th. With you have, it looks like it's a really good curve of 456th on 2, SU on 3. However, you're just giving your opponent a Red Dawn target. I guess if you would rather they Red Dawn that than Red Dawn an SU. So maybe you just keep those 3 cards and send back Engineers. On the other side, Uumoi keeping 34th, keeping Sickle, and sending back double SU. I think this is very wrong. SU is very powerful in this matchup. It's not going to be a lot of Sickle targets early. I don't hate keeping Sickle, but I think I would keep at least 1 SU alongside the 34th and Sickle. We'll see what they end up going for. Uumoi commits to that decision, sends back both SUs. It looks like Berto's considering keeping Engineers, and he's just going to full keep the hand. I'm not a fan of keeping Engineers going first. It is one of the 2 healing cards in your deck, and with both players running Ura, health total definitely can come in to an effect, but with going first and no card draw in hand, I think keeping Engineers is very risky. Playing it on turn 1, I'm also not a huge fan of, because you're just giving your opponent targets to play their Sickles on. Moy's just going to answer with his own Engineers. I don't hate this. You have 456th in hand. You can Sickle the Engineers whenever you want. You also might want to save Sickle for Sickle on your scouting party, something like that. Berto's going to answer, or follow that up with the 456th. I suspect we're just going to see Uumoi mirror this. And there's... I'm going to double check, actually, if either of these players are running Ural factories, because it seems very strange to me, the placement of those Engineers regiments if you are running Ural factories or Red Banner. Uumoi is not. So that's all good from him. Berto Burrito is not. Okay, so neither player running it. So their Engineers placements does not actually matter at all, because neither of them have any cards in their decks that are going to affect their own or the opponent's unit positioning, units coming back, units moving around. So, yeah. It looks very strange, but doesn't actually matter. Uumoi is going to hold back his own 456th, probably because he is afraid of something like Red Dawn push-up. So Bird is just going to answer with SU on curve, and this is why SU is so important to keep, because you can just like play an SU here. And yes, sometimes it's answered by Red Dawn, but in that case, you're just losing because your opponent had SU, 456th SU, and you had no Red Dawn, and they had their own Red Dawn for your units. And you just have to accept those losses, because at least you tried. Because now you're just doing Scouting Party, and you are accepting so much damage. I suspect we're going to see Sickle on the Engineers, push up both units, swing face for 5. I guess you could also Sickle and just slam a 34th. take it a bit slower. I don't hate that. I mean, this just feels... doesn't feel great. Let's put it that way. Now we see what Urumoy gets. It finds a 456th. You can do 456th Winter Warfare. That way the SU will trade with the 456th if it comes to that. That is going to be buffing the opponent's 456th. Draws you 2 cards. You're already so far behind on board by this point. I mean, like, I guess in theory you could do Recon Winter Warfare to draw 3. That seems bad. Like, you're in a position to where you can draw a bunch to heal, but you're also in a position where your opponent can just put out so much damage. And even if, like, the cards you need to draw into here for this play to be sort of worth it, he doesn't find any red dons. That's very unfortunate for him. This Recon's going to be able to slow down the front line. There is a red don for Berto Burrito, and he can be very aggressive. He could use this on the engineers and just go for the face. He has the credits to do red don on engineers, SU into the Recon double push-up. Play your own Recon. He's just going to go for the caddy. Go for the forced overdraw on Moy. Overdraws Red Dawn. And that's another reason not to go for the triple Recon, is you just can't get... you can't get use out of the extra cards you were drawing. However, he can do 456th trade, and if he finds a red dawn, he can actually take out 3 of these units from Berto and get his own 34th on the board. That's going to start with a sickle on the caddy, though. Well, no, you should start with a 456th. Preferably the one with Blitz. I strongly disagree with this ordering from Moy. Finds another 456. Well, he's got all 4 of them. However, what is he going to be able to do with them is a very different question. And, I mean, you know what they say, sickle first, but you want to be sickling the right target, because if he sickles the caddy, he can play Winter Warfare to take out the SU and the caddy. However, sickling just the SU means you're not killing the caddy, and now Berto can just hit the 456th with his 34th. He can shoot the caddy, or sorry, he can shoot the T80 with his caddy, go for a 50-50. He could just red dawn it. He can still red dawn the engineers if he wants to shut down that healing, and go really in on the pressure. He's going to go for the caddy 50-50, loses it. Is he going to clean it up with red dawn? Yes, he is. Pushes 456th, plays 34th, plays Recon. I quite like that from Berto. Go for the 50-50 on caddy, see if you win it. This counter-offensive is going to be huge from Moy. It's going to let him take out this 456th. Now, if only Zukov had hit one of these 34ths, would be much nicer. So that's going to be, make it an 8-5. Sorry, a 9-5. Plus 8 plus 4. You don't have a way of increasing that. You would you could play it on the 456th, though. You have the Zukov 456th. Just going for the raw 34th. He could be trying to set up for the very, very cheeky lethal of, if he finds an Ura off the top, he can go for counter-offensive, or Winter Warfare counter-offensive Ura, just kill Berto with like a 25 attack guy through this front line with Ura. Instead, he's just going to counter-offensive, trade off, draw last, I mean, so far, I have to say I disagree with both of these players a decent amount. I certainly disagree with Moy, with some of Moy's lines a lot more. And I mean, I think a decent amount of this is probably just nobody has played a self-damage mirror match in like 3 months or whenever the patch came out that nerfed self-damage. And this is a complicated deck. This is not a deck you can just like pick up and run with it. Even if you have months of experience like Berto does. And I do not recall how much self-damage Moy played before the patch. This turn, I think... Oh, you would love to just play 2/34ths here, but you can't. Well, you actually can. I think you just go for 456th. I think you have to Winter Warfare your opponent's recon. I don't think you really have a choice. Just go for 2 456ths. Winter Warfare... No, you don't even have the credits for the Petliakov after that. You can go for 2 456ths Winter Warfare 34th. Goes for 1... Are you going to do 34th and Petliakov? Goes for the 34th and the Petliakov. Berto has a few draws. He's probably going to start with a sickle. Well, no, you're probably going to start with a caddy onto the 456, because if you win the 50-50, you can sickle it. And then kill the Petliakov with your 34th guides. He's going to start with the sickle on it. Then go for the 50-50. I believe they have changed it so that if you play Winter Warfare here, 456th does not die. It formerly died. I have heard from other people that it does not die in this position. We will see if Berto has heard the same news or not. I think in this position he might have... I think Berto has heard that as well. So I think in this position he might be thinking about that and thinking, do I want to test this right now? Probably not. Which, again, is why I think attacking with Caddy first was the way to go, because if Caddy low rolls, you can then sickle one of these other targets. Maybe take out the engineers, prevent the healing, maybe just get some damage in on the Petliakov, whatever it may be. And here, Moy still not finding sickles, still not finding red dawns. He cannot take out this... Well, he can take out the 456th. However, it's going to be having to trade into it with the Zhukov'd 456th, which will leave him with 2 credits. And you can play T80, actually. I think that's your best line, because you keep your Petliakov alive, you take out all the threats in the front line. Oh, no. Looks like he's going to be sacrificing the Petliakov to take out this caddy. But this caddy dies to, like, every card in your deck. Like, this caddy dies to Cycle, it dies to Winter Warfare. Takes out the caddy. Maybe he forgot it was Zhukov'd? It's possibly forgot it was Zhukov'd, because there was a couple other points in this game where he could have gone for it. And it's crazy. It's turn 8. Think about how much decision-making has been gone down already in this match. And decision-making that I disagree with. And it's not just I disagree with it, it's wrong. It could be I disagree with it, and we get into like a 10-15 minute conversation about which is the correct way to go. It just shows how complicated this deck is, how complicated this mirror is. And just how complicated Kards is as a whole. Here, though, this turn is going to be a lot less complicated for Berto. It's going to kill the Petliakov, and... Okay, actually, I really expected to see the KV come out. I'm curious if there's a particular reason he doesn't go for the KV here. If it... Yeah. I mean, I know the effect isn't going to be doing much now. I guess it's because he doesn't want, like, a Red Dawn top deck and then T80 hits the 456 to trade for free, would be my best guess. In which case, fair enough. However, that leads to Red Dawn taking out SU. I guess Sickle, because the 456, the Sickle could also have punished him from the other way. And suddenly things are looking up for Moy. the Yak draw from Berto is massive. I really do not understand why he's holding on to this KV. Like, surely I'm missing something. Surely there's just some element of this matchup that I forgot. Oh, of course, it's the 456. He doesn't want to be buffing his opponent's 456 every single turn, because he's just gonna the +1/+1 on those is going to snowball much faster than KV is going to deal damage versus this engineers. Sorry, playing KV, not playing KV, absolutely correct from Berto. However, I would just like to highlight that Berto had the opportunity to kill this engineers on like turn 4, I think. In which case, Moy would essentially be dead. Now, obviously, he has the Great Patriotic War, so he wouldn't have literally just lost the game. But it just goes to show how much healing this Engineers has put out. Both of these players played Engineers on 1, and both of these Engineers are still alive on turn 10, and have given so much healing. Now, Moy does not have an answer for the Yak, so Berto is going to draw. He's going to take 1 damage. He's going to get +1/+1 on his 456th. He's going to play another 456th and probably just pass. Yep, he passes, and now Moy finds himself in the exact same position as Berto with this KV, which he does not particularly want to play. So he's probably just going to push up the 34th and maybe just pass. Maybe just leave it at that. Pushes up Engineers to get the KV out. And this is slightly different than Berto's position, because Urumoy has Ura and Great Patriotic War in hand. Now, Berto also has Ura and Great Patriotic War in hand now, but that is after drawing them off the Yak. Not having those in hand, there's absolutely no reason to play the KV. Having them in hand, there's good reason to play the KV, because you can just kill your opponent from hand if they push up units. And if you're Moy, you should probably be thinking about that. However, you're also in a much worse position because of this one Yak Berto drew. They were essentially both top decking with nearly equal board positions, and Berto's first draw was a Yak, and Urumoy has not been able to answer that, and that Yak has now drawn 3 cards, and it's given like +5/+5 in stats. Something crazy like that. And one way or another, this game is going to end with an Ura lethal in the next 2 or 3 turns. If anybody takes the front line, this game might just end. Now, Berto might actually be calculating lethal this turn, because he is close. The problem is there's only 1 unit in the front line. And, okay, so on this turn, if Berto does Great Patriotic War, Ura, swings into it, hits for 9, which means 8 damage face. He drops Urumoy to 4 health, but there's a guard up, so you can't do anything with the Yak. You can Winter Warfare, drop him to 3 health, but then you still can't deal any extra damage since all the guard units have too much health. So yeah, no lethals here for Berto, but it is exceptionally close. He's just going to hit it with Yak and pass, and Moy, I suspect, is just going to pass here. He's going to get out the Great Patriotic War. So he looks at his health total and says, well, my opponent has no burst potential now, so I'm just going to get out Great Patriotic War because my opponent takes 5 damage on their turn. And sure enough, that's exactly what he does. Berto takes the 5 damage. He gets huge units and stats. Now this Yak has suddenly become a liability. And honestly, there's an argument that maybe he even should have traded out the Yak on the previous turn, just because of the strength of Great Patriotic War with this KV on board, because the stats of your units don't really matter if you can just sit back and do nothing. Although I suppose even with just the KV on its own, without the Yak, you're still kind of forced to do something, because with Moy having KV on board, he just wins faster if Berto never takes the front line. And there's not... It's difficult for Berto to get any amount of stats on his units, where taking the front line is not going to make him lose to Ura. And here, Berto should just pass. You lose to Ura if you take the front line, and there is no way your opponent goes for the line. Well, there's not no way, but it seems unlikely your opponent goes for the line that they did if they have Ura in hand. I guess maybe the argument is they would have saved Ura. If they had Ura in hand, they would have saved Great Patriotic War to combine it in one turn, but some of these units have higher op cost. There's a lot of them. He'll have to be doing multiple trades. Although, is he dead to a single Ura? I don't think so. Berto decides he's just going to wait. No reason to force the issue just quite yet. There's no force to draw in this deck, so it's not like this KV is going to be doing anything. And here, Moi can just pass. Both players just feel so close to lethal. Both on low health, both taking damage, both with Ura in hand, but there's no lethals yet. So here, Moi just pass, hope Berto makes a mistake. And he thinks about it, and he does in fact just pass. Goes over to Berto's turn. Berto plays Great Patriotic War, get his health total up, pushes these units, and tries to force the issue. Gets KV up to the front now, too. So, on this turn, this is actually one of my favorite lethal puzzles I've ever actually seen in Kards. There is numerous ways for Moi to kill. Berto this turn, see how many you can find, see what's the most damage you can find. I think, if I remember, he has 11 over lethal, or maybe it was 13 over lethal exactly, with perfect play. But, and the way to accomplish that would be play Ura, Red Dawn Engineers, then attack the 10, no, it would be a 9 attack 456 into the 10 health one, and then play, oh, and then I think it's attack the 9 attack 34th Guards into the 12 health one, so he's left with a 1 health and a 12 or a 3 health. Then you play second Ura, and you hit for 10. Well, that's still lethal because you hit with 10, and then another 6. So that's not the way you get up to 23 damage, which I believe is... I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head. However, the point is, Moi has numerous paths to lethal here, and yeah, that is just the strength of double Ura. However, it is not quite as simple as just play double Ura attack with your units into his units, because that's not quite enough to get lethal. You have to do a little bit of ordering here. That is quite important. And we can just skip through this turn a little bit. But, essentially, Moi, I don't know if he didn't think he had lethal and just went for remove as much stats as possible, or if he miscounted lethal. It looks like he maybe forgot about the engineers healing. But, unfortunately for him, it did not get it, whether it was miscounting, mislethal, whatever it may be. Berto pulls that game back and takes it 1-0 in the crazy, crazy mirror matchup. And we move on to game 2. Which is going to be self-damage versus frontline. Because now, Berto won that mirror. However, he now has to win with the 2 worst matchups essentially in the game into self-damage. Well, as in, if he's presumably going to lose to self-damage, and then it's going to be 2 mirror matchups left over. He has the Combat Engineers into the Red Devils, but Moi has a very good answer in T80 plus 456th. Here, Berto would really love to have a half-track, especially because this First Rifles Petliakov Wombo combo in hand is going to be coming down soon. And it's a very good call from Moi playing on the right side of the HQ, since that's where the First Rifles is going to spawn. It's where you want the Petliakov to be. Yeah, you just want all your units on the right in this scenario. And he decides to push up the 456th. This does not get removed by 5th Rangers because of the deployment effect block from Petliakov. However, it could just be traded out on board. Berto sees no reason to do that. He's just going to play Sherman. This sets up potentially killing Petliakov if Moi does not have any self-damage. Of course, he does. Moy also finds his second Petliakov. He can play this in a couple of different ways. He could sickle Sherman first rifles. He could sickle Sherman second Petliakov, to be honest, because you are actually pretty safe doing that play. There's nothing in Berto's deck that could let him attack. If he plays sickle, there's nothing in Berto's deck that could let him attack a Petliakov this turn. So it looks like that's what he's leaning towards. He's wanting sickle at Sherman, but is it going to be the first rifles, or is it going to be the Petliakov? I 100% support the Petliakov here. I think just getting both down, they're two bombers, you have first rifles in hand. I have no idea why he is played it on the left. These are the two most important units on your deck. They're bombers, so they need to be protected. Why don't you put them both next to each other? So you can put the first rifles in the middle. Yeah, there is quite literally no reason in this matchup. It's an open deck list. You see your opponent's deck. They're not randomly running Suraj Gate. Berto just goes for the we can do it, buffs up these units. Here, Boy has... I mean, you can take out the Sherman. Doesn't feel great doing so. You can hit the Sherman once and play first rifles. That's the line I am leaning towards. However, that is sacrificing one of these bombers to the Sherman, which, again, begs the question of why you went for this line. He's just going to double hit the... Get out the Yak, double hit the Sherman. So, I like this. You were accepting the fact that one of these Petliakovs is going to die, except what you are saying is you're going to spend your entire turn killing it, not killing my Yak, not killing my other Petliakov, not developing the board. So I'm going to get another draw out of the Yak, and then I can just clean up your Sherman on the following turn, and I still have a Petliakov. I can still protect it with the first rifles. Now, Berto should kill the Petliakov on the right, because the one on the left will get double protected by first rifles. There's an argument to kill the one on the left, because then you can't protect Yak and Petliakov at the same time with one guard. He is going to kill the one on the left. He wants to be able to take out both of these units, or at least one of these units, I should say. And, suddenly, looking like a lot of damage could be done in the near future. First rifles to protect the Petliakov. Trades out with the Sherman, and does Yak go face, or does Yak hit the combat engineers? I would love to see Yak go face. Because at this point, you're happy if your opponent hits PIR into Yak. I mean, there's the worry of Greyhounds suddenly being able to kill Yak. I think you still want your opponent to spend the credits, and with double Urok counteroffensive Winter Warfare in hand, you want to be getting as much damage in as possible in the next couple turns. Because you realistically are going to win this game by going for the burst lethal. He decides to go face. I love this play. Very good call. And now Berto is left in an awkward position. He cannot kill Petliakov. There's no card in his deck that lets him kill Petliakov this turn. So there's certainly a lot of cards he would... I guess strategic bombing and a dive bombing. Oh, of course, he runs Patrol. There is a single copy of Patrol in Berto's deck, or two copies of Patrol in Berto's deck, actually, which would let him get through this first rifles. And that just, man, it shows how good Patrol is in this deck, in these matchups. This is why I like Patrol over dive bombing. And, yeah, there is a lot of damage that Moy could deal this turn. Unfortunately, it is not quite enough for lethal. I think if you do the math, it is 5 off lethal. Like, I think he's 1 credit off lethal this turn. Because he won't have the credits to attack with the Petliakov. However, he's going to do Scouting Party Winter Warfare. This opens him up to Strap Bombing and Stars and Stripes. And also he's going to be trading off the Guard. So this opens him up to just Blitz tanks, being able to take out this Petlyakov. The days of this Petlyakov is very much numbered. I would be quite shocked if Berto does not have a way to kill it. In hand, it's going to be the Strap Bombing. Takes out all these guys, and suddenly this counteroffensive looking a lot worse. And your opponent still has a very high health total. However, you have a very large hand. You can go for a few different plays. You can get the KV down. The benefit of the KV is, one, it's just going to be a ton of damage if your opponent does not have specifically Hellcat to remove it. And if they do have Hellcat to remove it, that is 5 credits they're committing to it. I'm not as much of a fan of taking out these 30 seconds. Like, realistically, you're not going to stop a Sherman. Also, realistically, stopping a Sherman's not that important, especially if you have a KV on the board. I think getting the KV down is just, it's so difficult for your opponent to remove, and if your opponent can't remove it, these 30 seconds become liabilities because of the way URA works, being able to deal a ton of burst damage through with them. I would have loved to just see 456 and KV that turn. Half track comes out. This is going to slow Moy down quite a bit, so is the Red Devils. Is there any sort of lethal shenaniganry here? Not quite. With a Winter Warfare draw, that is going to be 8. Double 99th means Winter Warfare draw. There it is. That is going to be plus 10, 16, 19. However, he can only get through 13 damage, 14 with the Winter Warfare. He is 3 off lethal. Moy is, that is. Do you just go for it, though? You're also 1 credit off lethal with the Red Dawn. If this was any unit other than Devils, this would be lethal. If the other unit Berto played was anything other than 99th, this would be lethal. Actually, that's not true. He would be 1 off lethal in that case. I think you still go for it, though. Drop your opponent to 3. You're left with a massive unit on board. You have KV in hand. And he is going to go for it. And then he's going to presumably Red Dawn. Oh, but if he Red Dawns the Hellcat, he dies. Oh, sorry, if he Red Dawns the half track, he dies to Hellcat. So he can't really do that. You got to accept the fact that your opponent has that. So he drops him to 3. He goes in for the play. Berto top decks a Blitzkrieg, and that is going to put game 2 away in his favor by the skin of his teeth once again. Although I will say Moy played that one. Other than the very bizarre play with putting the Petliakovs on the 2 opposite sides of the HQ. Other than that, pretty massive blunder. I think he played that game generally much better than he played game 1. However, he still lost. And now it is going to go into game 3. And he is certainly favored to beat Jagro in this matchup. However, he needs to beat Jagro 3 times in a row. They got straight into the game. Moy starts with a 456th double sickle. Very powerful start. However, on the other side of the board, Berto's hand, he has 2 Type 94. Well, he has Type 94 and a surprise attack in hand. He has 2 Type 93s. This hand is looking very, very, very good for going up against self-damage. And Moy just is out of self-damage. It feels like every single game. He's just... I mean, this one he had 2 sickles. But it just feels like every game he's out of cards. Berto finds the Sendai Regiment. I have to wonder what sickle was why sickle wasn't used to kill 22nd last turn. Because we see 22nd would have been on board when the sickles were played. So I'm not sure why he chose to leave this 22nd up. It is difficult to imagine. a situation where that would be correct. And here, Berto has a pretty wide variety of choices. He can just double type 93, take out this 456th. You are hard committing that your opponent does not have or find a Winter Warfare with that line, though. Surely he would have played it last turn, though, if he did have one. So you're taking a huge risk, but it's a calculated risk. And he is going to take some of that risk away. He is going to trade out the Type 93. So that way, if there's a Winter Warfare, at least there's some damage in on this First Rifles. However, Winter Warfare leaves First Rifles at a 3-1, which means it's still going to absorb another hit from another body. However, that is not what Moy has in hand, and this turn, I would love to just see First Rifles into the 22nd, and then play Recon Petlyakov, because Petlyakov is so powerful in this matchup as well. And looking at the board, I guess there's the double surprise attack are in hand already, so if you go for the Petlyakov line, you're kind of just eating the Petlyakov, and he leaves 22nd up. Surely this is wrong. Now Berto can dive bombing the First Rifles, 22nd into it, or he's just going to 22nd, he's going to keep the surprise attack, 22nd into the 34th, dive bombing on the T-80, takes out these 3 units, Second Rifles comes back. Another Ura draw. Has he ran double Ura in every single game? Can 34th and then Petlyakov. Seems like he is very scared of this Petlyakov being double surprise attacked. I think you need to go for that, because if your opponent double surprise attacks and then pushes a bunch of units, like, the way you win this game is with a double Ura lethal cheese at this point. You are so far behind. And a double Ura lethal cheese is not helped by your opponent killing 34th guards. Berto's just going to go for key, get down a huge unit, and double surprise attack the 34th. I'm not actually super convinced by this line. I think I would have rather seen like a Sendai come out, maybe. Maybe First Signal Dina. I feel like you don't want to give your opponent card draw. Like, you have Fane. You have all of the card draw in the world. There is no reason to give your opponent any card draw. However, on the other side, Moy does need to answer key, and he doesn't have a way to answer key. As we saw, he literally just passed last turn. Well, sorry, he played the Petlyakov and passed last turn. Here comes out the Shiden, though. He can trade the Petlyakov into the key. He can draw first with the Recon. He can also Recon into the Shiden and try to draw a Red Dawn. I think the better play was, yeah, what he did. Try to draw 456th to do 456th SU to guard up and absorb hits from the Shiden. Instead, he does not find that. He's just going to play out a bunch of recons. Berto can swing face for 10 and play an Aichi. And that will be that. Looks like Berto is even considering just drawing for the guaranteed desperate measures. I would have much rather see the Aichi get on board. There's not really a punish for it. I mean, I suppose with this line, there's, with the signal regiment on board, that's just another bit of burn you're getting. But, again, it doesn't really matter how Berto plays this. This game is as good as lost. Moy finds the Winter Warfare, gets 3 draws, takes out the Type 93. However, he needs to upgrade this Red Dawn. He does not. He's just going to throw it into the Shiden. I think maybe he forgot about the Signal Regiment. Maybe he just realized that he probably wasn't winning this game regardless. He accepts lethal and goes out to the Signal Regiment, meaning Berto wins 3-0 in the quarterfinals. And this is the bracket. This is Tiger versus No One, first semifinal. Jinlun versus Berto, second semifinal. Again, I recorded my analysis of the semifinals, third place match, and finals match live as the tournament was happening, so I didn't know the reaction that is going to come up shortly after this video. So if you want to see that, check out the new format. Tell me which one you prefer. Let me know if you want to see more tournament analyses. I did a lot of these back in the day. If you scroll down in my videos, you will see a bunch of them for older tournaments. But yeah, let me know if you want to see more of these formats. Subscribe, like, share, comment, etc. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.